Hello? 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 I'll be putting my mouth. I just got my ego.
Folks find it on the computer. And also, any council who has not yet sent the feedback from last week's listening session to Barb, you can do that in the next couple of days. That would be me. It would be a shot at me. Oh, I'm not alone. So we're just getting, things that you heard that suits the time that you want to share.
I make people write them down, so I heard zero bars.
This is what I heard.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole, February the 4th, 2025 meeting here. It is it 8:30? 8:31, and I call this meeting to order, and I will get Mayor McKay to read the land acknowledgement.
I would like to acknowledge Wolfville is situated in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. And as such, ask that we conduct our business with the 7 sacred teachings in mind: truth, honesty, love, courage, respect, wisdom, and humility.
Thank you, Mayor McKay. And can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Butler. Thanks to Councillor Elliott. There is one change to the agenda. Emily Boucher of Valley Run will not be presenting this morning. So I'll move on to declarations of conflict of interest. If there's anyone around the table that would like to declare. Seeing none, we will move on. So can I have a motion to approve the Committee of the Whole minutes, January 14th, 2025? Second, Councillor Promotive, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye, and that is approved. Can I have a motion to approve the Committee of the Whole in-camera minutes, January 14th, 2025? Thank you, Councillor Butler, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Van Niekerk. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye, and that is approved. And can I have a mover for Special Budget Committee of the Whole minutes? Councillor Elliott, seconder. Councillor Promoter, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye, and that is passed. Thank you. So we're going to move on to presentations. First person sitting in the hot seat is Nick Sharp. Hi, Nick. Welcome this morning. It's a beautiful morning. Welcome. Nick is the director of Events Acadia. Did I get the yeah. And we will be he's going to be giving us an update on some funding. So I'll let you take it away.
Much. Perfect. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate you taking your time and allowing me to come in to speak to you today. Nick Sharp, Director of Events Acadia. I've been in the role or with Acadia for just over 2 years now, since October. And I actually was fortunate enough to come in and present just over a year ago, probably about 14, 15 months ago, with my former colleague, Tanya Colburn. And at that time, it was to give an update on introducing Events Acadia and a couple major event opportunities that were on the table. We'll talk about those today. So today, I just wanted to take the opportunity to come and provide a little brief update on Events Acadia and our operation. Wanted to go over some of the event highlights from this fiscal that we're just on the tail end of, and some of the impact that came along with those events, and then finish up by talking about some of the requests heading into next fiscal year relative to major events. So first up, just as a reminder, so back in 2022, Events Acadia developed a strategic framework for regional event hosting, and it really did transform and broaden the scope of our department, where it was more recognized and established that we would play a more regional role relative to major event attraction and securing events and managing events for the region. And these are events that we would consider major. So looking at events that, generate a large amount of economic, cultural, and social impact, that are multi-day, that increase visitation, especially around those shoulder seasons and winter seasons. So this was the new mission of our department that was established with that framework. Just some really quick hitter stats here. So it was interesting. I pulled from our box office system. We use a system called Audience View, what our gross ticket sales have been like, just to get a sense of the volume of business that we've done over the past few years, just with ticketed events. So these are things like performances and entertainment. You can see here we've grown the last few years. Of course, this isn't unexpected with response and recovery from COVID-19. But back in 2 fiscals ago, we did about $430,000 through our box office system. Then last fiscal, it was up to $644,000, and then this fiscal, just year to date, just from April 1st to now, at about $671,000. So this really does demonstrate the growth in ticketed events that we've been realizing. This excludes Varsity Sport as well, and it doesn't include things like, I think I heard a whisper of Touchdown Atlantic that wouldn't have went through the box office. So this is just looking at events that are going through our box office, which wouldn't represent all ticketed events. I picked it up. So again, we are kind of multifaceted within our department, as you know. So we do service internal events at Acadia, as well as external events, and we're really mandated to focus on external and bring visitors to Wolfville and to Acadia. Just to give you the sense of events that we've hosted to date, just this fiscal by quarter, 60 in Q1, 44, and then 73 in Q3 here. So 177 events hosted year to date. This includes Varsity Sport. So our department has varying roles within all these events. It could look very small, from a meeting with a couple services all the way up to Nova Scotia Music Week, where it requires multiple resources and a year of planning. We're also, again, going back to our strategic framework, just as a reminder, we're one of the only entities, I think, that really invests in business development relative to major events. So we are that kind of entity in that for Wolfville and for the Valley region to go out and represent the region, to try to get some major event business and secure those events. A few examples of those, are these are just things that I consider a couple of these can't miss every year. So we always go to the Sport Tourism Canada Congress. This is where we have dozens of national events rights holders like Curling Canada, Hockey Canada, Basketball Canada, so on and so forth, where we actually set up meetings with these national rights holders directly. And we pitch our region and our infrastructure and our services and our hospitality to come and bring their event or their sports camp out east. Sport tourism alone generates $7 billion in Canada, so it's one of the focal points of event tourism when we look at our holistic tourism strategy. We also we're represented at Event Atlantic, which is just a group of it's an association of event professionals from around Atlantic Canada. And new this year, we attended the SPOHO Experience Conference in PEI, again with national rights holders. These are all networking conferences that we think it's important to invest in and to have a presence at. The picture there you'll see, that's me and my colleague Maddie. That was the COCOA National Conference, which we just attended last fall, and we're hosting this coming fall here in Wolfville, It's bringing together all the Canadian college and university conference and event organizers. And we actually won a couple of event awards. So Maddie won Rising Star of the Year, and we won a couple of event awards for our Harlem Globetrotters hosted game and the Brett Kissel concert we hosted last year, which was kind of nice to be recognized by our counterparts around the country. So now moving into Nova Scotia Music Week, was anybody able to take in some of the action when we had Nova Scotia Music Week? Yeah, awesome. Jody, I know you have. Jody was my co-chair for the event. I think everybody knows. By the way, I will back up and say, if you have any questions, I can address any questions at the end, or you can just feel free to interrupt me too. That's more than fine with me. So Nova Scotia Music Week, as you know, that was one of the two events that we came and presented on this opportunity last year. This is a great example of living into our strategic framework and playing that role in the community that tries to intentionally attract events that fit within our scope, that would bring significant benefits to our region, and that we have the infrastructure and the capacity to actually execute here. Really great example of that. It's coming into its 25th year in 2026, and it has never been hosted in Wolfville. And this is, I think, as demonstrated last fall, the perfect community for that event. Just to go through some of the impact numbers here first. This came directly from Music Nova Scotia. So if you're not familiar, it's a Music Nova Scotia owned event. They rotate it through communities through a bidding process. So our Events Acadia, in partnership with the town representing our region last year, we put together a bid to host Music Week, and we were successfully awarded that bid. And then we put a planning committee together, which Jody generously helped lead, and we planned it for over a year and had over 100 volunteers that helped execute it over the four-day event. So some of those impact numbers: 417,000 social media impressions. Won't go through these numbers. Everyone can see what I'm looking at on the screen. But I think the important number here is total digital impressions, 1.03 million. And this has Wolfville on all those impressions. So just the advertising and the brand recognition alone, sometimes I think we can underestimate, what that's worth relative to the investment of these major events. We had 105 festival performances over the 7 venues, including the Old Orchard Inn. They had 47 conference sessions. They had 2,200 unique attendees, and they had 153 registered volunteers. I'm skipping a few here. But the two of the biggest takeaways for me was the growth from year over year. So over last year, they were up 25% in gross revenue and up 22% in gross sales. That gross sales is the attendance numbers. So Music Nova Scotia was enthusiastically happy with the growth of the festival. It certainly demonstrated that people wanted to come to Wolfville, and it worked well for the festival, which bodes well for us too, and our ability to actually plan and host and execute major events like that. There's also just a clip note too. We heard, Jody's attest to this, but we heard the comment. We had a full planning committee together to help execute our deliverables that we were contracted to deliver on. And one of those things was just some hospitality for the delegates that came in. And we had a really great committee member that put together all these delegate bags showcasing all of our local retailers and our products. And we heard multiple occasions the best bags ever in any Music Nova Scotia week. So I think that speaks highly of our business community here as well. There's Gina Luckett there. Yes, I should give her dues. Yeah, she's more than earned it. A little bit more of the impact that if I wasn't sitting here, we probably wouldn't think of some of this, but just the infrastructure. This is a really small scale example of what major events can do for infrastructure. I believe, and I think it's probably, easily demonstrated, that major events are one of the biggest and strongest catalysts to opportunities for infrastructure upgrades by far. In a small scale example, we had to get electrical work done at Fountain Commons just to be able to accommodate the electrical and the power requirements, but we've invested in that. Again, a small budget line, but now it means that we can do those events in Festival Theater. We desperately needed some supplies and equipments that we'll use for, you know, on an almost daily basis. One of those things is event tables that we at Acadia invested in for this event, but these are kind of legacy pieces that help with the infrastructure. Without that event, we wouldn't have had the justification or the rationale or the need to actually invest in these things that will be beneficial and help build capacity down the road. Just the heightened profile and reputation, just going back to some of those impressions and numbers. And if you were around the festival, I know a few of you got to take it in. If you were at the awards brunch, you would just see the heightened profile and the recognition of, wow, this is in Wolfville, and this is absolutely amazing by a whole industry of folks around Nova Scotia and delegates from around the world. It's quite invaluable. Some of these things are tangible to measure, and some of these are harder, more difficult to quantify. So it's important we look at the full picture and just the capacity building relative to the partnerships, the increase in volunteerism, the knowledge we get from volunteerism. All these things are really important relative to being event ready as a region. So the more events that we host, the more equipped we are to host more events, in a nutshell. And especially even with sponsorship, just building capacity and expectations around the need for corporate sponsorships for these events to be successful. It's really, when we talk about an event like Nova Scotia Music Week, they're true community partnerships where every single piece is important for it to succeed. Now let's talk about the investment in Nova Scotia Music Week. Some of this will be a reminder, some of it new information. So we did pay a host fee to Music Nova Scotia, $41,000. So again, how these events typically work is the owner of the event, in this case, Music Nova Scotia, has an asking host fee, and that's part of the bid process. So these events largely require some type of investment. That's where a lot of communities have, you know, accommodations levy, where others invest in it with their municipal partners and so on and so forth. So the $41,000 was what we paid as a host fee to host. The direct local organizing committee and venue costs amounted to approximately $14,000. These are costs that Acadia took on as well, as we were contracted to plan and deliver the event. And we're responsible for a certain number of deliverables that require budget lines. So oh yeah, sure, certainly. Sorry, how's that? Is that better? Okay, great. Sorry, folks. You let me go this long. Should I start over? The total community cash investment was $55,000. And again, because of the partnership, going back to the Town and Gown Committee, we're able to allocate some of the Town of Wolfville funding through our annual agreement for that. Without that funding, this event wouldn't have been possible. And this doesn't even get into the in-kind contribution that was made by Acadia, by the town, and by the community as a whole. So at Acadia, we had 3 venues for 4 days, and we provided that planning oversight and that event management focus. That's kind of a gap here relative to major events. Our community donated venues and hotels and products and so on and so forth. We retrieved local sponsorship of $15,000 as part of our contract, going back to Music Nova Scotia too. And looking at, again, this is such a great example of where our partnership is so key relative to major event investment, because some events just, this one, although we thought of it as a great addition to student programming, we know that the impact was largely in the community. And we know that some events have opportunity to generate revenue directly back. So you can subsidize or you can have some cost recovery for your investment. Others, not so much the case. You're investing in the event for all the cultural, social, economic impact, all the impact that was demonstrated. And this was certainly the latter. Sure. Sorry, I might be, Brittany, if I'm coming up on my time, I can just speed things up too. I don't want to delay the meeting.
Question. Did Nova Scotia Music Week pay the, I don't know, like Devour in the Fountain or in the Commons, whatever it's called itself? Sorry, King's Arms, did they pay King's Arms, or did they just get the liquor revenue?
All the venues got to retain their bar sales. And there was some agreements with some venues depending on the venue. I don't think it's appropriate for me to get into their contract because the contracts with the venues are directly between Music Nova Scotia and the venue itself. So I can't say there was always, typically how this works in other communities is the venues are provided free of charge and the venue owners get to retain the bar service. Music Nova Scotia gets to keep the ticket sales. Because Music Nova Scotia with this event is responsible for all the artist fees and all the production fees as well. So just to give you an example, there was probably a $20,000 stage build and production build in Fountain Commons that was solely the cost of Music Nova Scotia. Yeah. So sorry, I can't answer your question directly and with the details. Yeah. Other major event highlights. So these are events, just a few I'm gonna pull out and highlight just because they fit that regional scope, events that I would want to be sitting here talking to you about that brought strong impact to Wolfville. So we hosted Brett Kissel in April. We hosted 2 Harlem Globetrotter shows in May, which that one I'm quite proud of Acadian for Region 4 because they don't usually host. If you followed their tour, they went from Scotiabank Center to our our little gymnasium in our athletic complex, and then to the big center in Moncton. So this is kind of out of the norm for the Globetrotters to play that size venue, and it was a great, unique opportunity for residents here. People responded really well to that. And then we hosted most recently Christmas in Space. That was a big arena show with a big stage production. Anybody attend any of these events? Yeah, couple. Altogether, so just looking at the impact here, that amounts to 5,300 tickets sold and $287,000 in gross ticket sales alone. This isn't profitability, by the way. I just wanted to give a sense of the volume that these events are actually bringing in. And of course, we know this equates to increased visitation as well. We know that people were traveling in for Christmas in Space around the holidays to come catch that show and do some shopping and eat out in our town. So yeah, specifically for Christmas in Space, this was the one that it was most beneficial for us to allocate some of our Town of Wolfville partnership funding towards. Had increased visitation in the winter season. It truly did bring some economic impact, unique local experience for our residents and our quality of life here in Wolfville. And of course, again, capacity building. The more events we host, the more we're going to be prepared to host in the future, especially when we look at those major arena events, because they take so many resources, not just for planning, but also from the infrastructure and the operational side. Just to give you a snapshot, because this was one that we did allocate Town of Wolfville funding for, as you can see here, the net of taxes gross revenue was about $75,000, and this just gives you a snapshot of the expenses. So again, without the funding, I was really appreciative for our funding agreement last year because it enabled us to go after this opportunity and to realize this opportunity and bring that unique programming that I don't think we've seen here in Wolfville, kind of fill the holiday programming gap here to Acadia. Moving on, I'm certain I'm probably almost out of time, so somebody give me the signal here if I got to wrap it up. Canadian Curling Pre-Trials. As a reminder, last time my colleague Tanya and I were in, we presented on this. We got your endorsement to proceed with the bid. We were then awarded the bid, and we did set the expectation that for future years, our funding would hope to include funding for this event. So just to give a brief update, that event's happening from October 20th to 26th this coming fall. We expect upwards of 20,000 people in attendance throughout the week and weekend. We just launched our volunteer form last Friday. We expect 170 volunteers needed and will be secured to execute that event. It'll have 20 to 22 draws over the course of the Monday to Sunday. 4 to 6 draws are going to be broadcast on TSN. So four draws minimum, up to 6 draws. It's kind of complicated. I won't get into the draw schedule, why there's a variance there, but the estimated total viewership on TSN is $1.5 million. And this came directly from Curling Canada and TSN based on their past event in 2021. Beyond that, the full event's live streamed across Curling Canada's platforms. They estimate right in the bid document, $2 million economic impact generated from this event. It's part of the road to 2026. So we're in a true partnership with Halifax, where the trials is going to be at the Scotiabank Center. So part of this announcement was the premier actually announced that these pre-trials were coming to Wolfville. And we have some potential infrastructure improvements on the table because of this event. So this truly is one of the most major events that we'll host by several metrics in the last several years. To give you an idea of the revenue breakdown, this is just anticipated, and this includes a potential infrastructure project that we're working on with ACOA. So this is kind of where we anticipate the revenue to come from. So we hope that we'll be approved for some funding to increase our PA capacity in the arena, build some standing room railings and countertop around for a better fan experience, and hopefully even look into a scoreboard replacement that includes some video elements. This is very preliminary. Our application went in, but of course it's not guaranteed. For the purpose of giving you a true picture of where we're at, we included these numbers here today. So based on the ask, I guess, is I'm jumping ahead of myself here. Sorry, first, I just want to demonstrate, we do expect some significant funding from the province through the Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage. And I think I mentioned that last time I was here. And hopefully the ACOA funding comes to fruition either. So truly at all levels of government, we're looking at some funding support one way or another. And it's really important for those other parties, for the province, for ACOA is kind of the chicken or the egg in a lot of cases, for them to see that it's being supported by all levels of government. That really checks a lot of boxes for those other funders. So that brings me to the final slide here, just looking at Canadian curling pre-trials, what we're hoping the council will consider in deliberations for the budget. Relative to the Events Acadia funding is $30,000 that we can directly allocate towards that event that will come with such significant impact. And then an additional $10,000 consideration for new events. And these will be for things like equipment to support our major event hosting efforts, new event opportunities that require investment, just like we were able to do with Christmas in Space this year, and business development initiatives. I believe that's everything. Again, I apologize. I wasn't tracking my time, so I'm sorry if I've delayed the meeting here. Was there any questions?
Other questions? Sure.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Wondering with this curling anticipated, is there any connection with the Wolfville Curling Club, or is it all happening in the arena?
No, there's definitely a connection with the Wolfville Curling Club. We have an MOU with the Wolfville Curling Club talking about what opportunities there will be for fundraising and what we're hoping they'll help lead. There's no doubt I have experience with curling events from my previous role in Truro that the curling clubs are so key. They bring those 175 volunteers I talked about. Those are coming from the curling clubs. So they'll have opportunities to fundraise through 50-50 sales and program sales at the event itself, and also through sponsorship split as well with our sponsorship efforts. And the president of the Wolfville Curling Club is actually the co-chair on our planning committee. So, and we have several members from the Wolfville Curling Club and other curling clubs. So we have 5 that represent the region total on our planning committee, and we're liaisoning with the other clubs. So very engaged on a number of fronts.
Okay, I just wondered because they'd recently, or maybe it's still in process, renovated their facility. So not
Yeah.
physical.
We
but-
haven't worked out exactly. We know we want to host some type of ancillary events or programming at the Wolfville Curling Club. We know
Okay.
that some teams will want to practice there as well. So I'm just working with them on what they'd like to see happen there, because part of this should be driving people towards the Wolfville Curling Club whenever we can.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
right beside the arena, so it makes sense.
Okay.
Sorry, maybe I have the mic. So the Nova Scotia Music Week, you're going to chase that again?
Would the town of Wolfville want us to get that back? I can tell you from Music Nova Scotia's perspective, they would like to come back here. And again, it's just a matter of communities that are willing to pay the host fee and that work well and working through some of the learnings from previous years. I think if it's something that we collectively are interested in hosting again, they would be more than willing to engage in that discussion.
I'm just going to pass it along here. I just have a question. So the pre-trials, I wasn't familiar with pre-trials. So the pre-trials are the people that qualify from this. They go to the trials that are in Halifax, and that would be at the beginning of 2026.
Yeah, so
Or
the pre-trials determine the last spot for the men
last
and
spot.
women's that are qualified to enter the trials. And the trials determine who will represent Canada at the 2026 Winter Olympics. So the trials in Halifax are about 4 or 5 weeks after
Okay.
the pre-trials wrap up
Okay, thank you.
for team championship. So the trials for this is for team. Yeah, the mixed doubles just happened in Liverpool, just in December, January. Yeah.
Can I answer the 2026? I'd love to see Nova Scotia Music would come back in 2026 for the 25 years of their anniversary. I think that would be pretty special. If you didn't attend, I actually had no idea what it was until I got involved. And I didn't realize even through all of the planning what the week would entail. And it was one of the funnest weeks I had in Wolfville. It was amazing.
It was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. It's awesome to see so many events coming, and I personally have really appreciated what you guys have put on in the last year. I have two questions. The first, just a quick one around sponsorship opportunities for the curling pre-trials. So for the event, is going to be, you're not clear if the event's going to be at Acadia or the curling building, or is it only at Acadia? Sorry, I wasn't clear.
No, when I talked about the curling club, sorry for any confusion there. We just talked about, I just meant ancillary events, like doing some youth programming as part of the event. The event is absolutely at the arena in the
Right.
athletic complex.
So if local businesses wanted to look at sponsorship opportunities, they would want to work with you at Acadia, not necessarily the local building, because
Yeah.
there wouldn't be as many eyes on that.
Yeah, we have a sponsorship deck that we just created. We have a sponsorship committee, so people can feel free to reach out to me and we can start the conversation.
Okay, all right,
There's
great.
lots of opportunities for sponsorship, and I think high value sponsorship too, considering the TSN broadcast component and the
Yes.
increased traffic that we're looking at.
Okay, great. I feel like maybe some of the local businesses aren't necessarily aware of that. So, okay.
That work is really, we're just starting to
Yeah.
get going with that work. So
My other question is just around more broadly, as you grow events and popularity and demand for the events that you're putting on grows for the town. What are your thoughts, or what have you been doing to sort of meet the demand for tourism in the town with the availability of accommodations for them to stay? You know, I hear people saying like, I wanted to come up for Nova Scotia Music Week, but I couldn't get a place to stay, for example. So they end up doing day trips or not coming. And I'm just wondering if that's something that Events Acadia has looked into, especially for things that are happening in our busy season, like the curling event is taking place in October, which is, extreme with homecoming. There's just a lot of activity in the town. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
well, I think it's a much more broad challenge than for certainly just Acadia or Events Acadia
Yeah.
to solve. I think it's a collective.
Have you seen any challenges with that though, or?
Yeah, I think it's easily, my thoughts are that we do have a capacity issue here in Wolfville, and it does prevents me from, it dictates the scope of events that we can bring to Wolfville.
Right.
So right away, our infrastructure might allow for an event that would work great for Wolfville, but hotel capacity would prevent us from having a competitive bid or meeting minimum bid requirements.
Yeah.
So there's a challenge there right off the start, and then there's going to be more operational logistical challenges on a case by cases with events. So Devour is happening the same time as Canadian Curling Pre-Trial, so that presents a number of logistical challenges that we're working through. One of those would be accommodations.
Yeah.
We did our diligence in discussing with the Bauer and with the hotels before we agreed to move forward with the bid, that we felt we could reasonably conclude that there's capacity for all events, but people do have to get creative when they come to the Valley here for events sometimes. And that's where wonderful Airbnbs come in as an important service provider as well.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
I think that's it. Thank you so much, Nick, for coming in this morning. Okay, we are going to quickly move on. Emily is not here this morning, so so Leanne from Open Arms, the Executive Director of the Resource Center, do I have that correct? Yes, is here to do a presentation. Welcome, Leanne.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me today. It's nice to be here. I know I've already had the opportunity of working with with this council in addressing the individuals experiencing homelessness within your community last fall. And I think we all agree that there was a very positive outcome from that. And so I hope that what I'm going to share with you today is a continuation of that great partnership and that great work that we've already done together. I'll just wait for the presentation to come up. Here we go. Thank you. Okay, and I can control the slides. Okay, great. So I'll start off my presentation giving a bit of background on Open Arms Resource Center in case some of you may not be familiar with our organization and the breadth of the work that we do. So we're a dynamic and very much growing nonprofit organization that operates throughout the Annapolis Valley. We're looking to address homelessness by addressing the root causes of homelessness. And we're committed to treating every individual with dignity and respect, recognizing the inherent worth and unique journey of each person. And we're looking to have impact along the spectrum of the housing spectrum. So we serve individuals who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We provide shelter services. So I believe many of you are familiar with our downtown Kentville shelter location, which we refer to as Oasis. It's a low barrier, meaning there are very few reasons why someone would not be welcomed into our space and provided with shelter. And it's housing focused shelter so that as soon as individuals stabilize and receive support such as food and shower and clothing and all the necessities of life, we work towards housing conversations, with housing being the ultimate goal for all individuals within our shelter. We have a second stage shelter, which is called Tiny Meadows. We operate the pallet infrastructure that the province has provided us with. And we call that a second stage shelter because by and large, the individuals come to that shelter site from our Oasis shelter site once they've stabilized and have some of the fundamental pieces like they have a source of income, whether that be government sources or employment. They have their ID, they have a higher degree of housing readiness, and then they are provided with an independent living situation in the form of a individualized unit. So they're quite small. We call them sleeping units, and then there's common hygiene units which have showers and laundry and washroom facilities, and then a communal building where we provide dining facilities. So in addition to our 2 shelter sites, we run housing programs, which are fairly new. We launched those in October. I think we may have already discussed a little bit about our more traditional housing program for individuals with low to mid acuity and like relatively few barriers to homelessness, or few barriers to housing, excuse me. And then we also have a second program for individuals experiencing chronic homelessness that may have higher number of barriers to housing. And through that intensive case management program, we have a subsidy that allows us to reduce the affordability barrier. And so individuals, we can truly operate under a housing first principle where individuals receive housing and then they're able to work on the barriers that would prevent them from being fully stable and increasing their income and other things. And so we've experienced between these two programs, we have experienced incredible success. And I really want to celebrate those successes that our whole team has contributed to since operating our housing programs. And in conjunction with our shelter programs, because they are very housing focused, we have housed 15 individuals since October. Now, these are individuals who have a lease in their name and are supported in their housing situation to ensure the sustainability of that housing. So that has opened up 13 shelter beds over the winter so that we're able to create a flow of individuals experiencing homelessness into that stable housing. And that is really our goal. We're not interested in expanding our shelter services any further because we want to have that flow take place and bring individuals into that stability. And again, our goal is housing for every individual. Our other streams of work involve affordable housing. This is relatively new to us, but we are actively seeking opportunities to acquire buildings to operate affordable housing. And we're working closely with the provincial government, and we would always be welcome to or interested in working with yourselves as you work on your accelerator funding to find opportunities for us as a nonprofit organization to own and operate affordable housing, which we believe is a really important model that operates outside of the market housing. Although there is a role for market housing, this is an opportunity to provide forever affordable and deeply affordable housing. And finally, our outreach work. And so this is where we support individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And this is where we've had this very positive partnership with the town of Wolfville already and demonstrating what an important role our partnership can play in supporting individuals and removing encampments and providing stability for those individuals. And I can't get into any specific details, but I think it's safe to say that the partnership we have engaged in has been very successful. And it's through the work of our professional staff who are able to build relationships and journey with those individuals and find the most appropriate next step for them. I will also say that we operate under an agreement with the provincial government to provide extreme weather shelter. So anytime the temperature goes particularly low, and if there's the polar vortex we had the week before last, we were able to mobilize an extreme weather shelter to bring people in from the cold. Anytime there's high levels of snow, we also mobilize that service. So I won't spend a lot of time on this slide because I think everyone is very aware of the need, and the need is increasing. In November, we participated in a service-based count to try and quantify the number of individuals experiencing homelessness. This was done through Homeless No More and their partnership with Acadia University. The full numbers haven't come out, and I look forward to that organization providing all of us with updates on those numbers, but we can safely say that the numbers are on the rise. And we ourselves at Open Arms have experienced a drastic increase in the need for our services over the past year. We are receiving calls, not just from police departments asking for support, because they tend to be the first line of defense or the first phone call that members of the community call when they see someone distress, or whether it be loitering or an instance where somebody is exhibiting behavior that is concerning. I think in the case of the town of Wolfville, it's likely both your police service and your bylaw officers. And so we've received information from these sources that the increase for services is on the rise as well. And finally, we know that transportation to services is an issue because of the rural nature of our area. People experience barriers to accessing services, transportation being one of those barriers. And so what we're proposing is a robust outreach program that can address these issues. We piloted an outreach program last spring with money from the federal government. We saw that the need was real, and we've attempted to sustain some form of outreach in our program over the summer, but it's an unfunded program that we're looking to have formalized and sustainable. what I'm proposing today is a winter response. So through other sources of funding, we've been able to have a soft launch of our outreach program, mobile outreach, in the Valley throughout the month of January. But with your support, we can have a more robust team that's dependable, and we can do much more work with a more sustainable funding source. And so what our mobile outreach team will do is, we could call it street outreach, have designated times throughout the week where they are walking the streets to connect with individuals that may be experiencing homelessness or may be in need. The other aspect of this is that we have a phone number so that for members of the community and businesses who may see a need, they can call our service versus, that would divert some phone calls from the police service or from the bylaw officers. And what we're doing is what we call case management. So it's not just handing out sandwiches along the street. What we're doing is stopping and building relationship with individuals and having touch points with them so that we, through that relationship, are bringing them through the higher degrees of stability. And when the time is right for them, through motivational interviewing and through a trauma-informed response, they can become more ready to receive services. And then, the outreach role ends once we've connected individuals with the system of care. And then we go and find more individuals that are in need. And so we would be going out into encampments and having that opportunity to really connect with people who are very much unconnected to the system right now, because without our outreach, we're very place-based and people have to come to us, and that's a huge barrier to receiving services. And so through the funding that we have received so far, we are able to hire a mental health outreach worker who comes with some counseling background. And we believe that that's a really important aspect. So individuals that may have mental health or addictions as their key barrier to housing, we're able to support them in, like I said, in coming to stability and connecting them with the medical field and the Nova Scotia Health, which is ultimately the system that they need to provide those services. And our mobile outreach team is also responsible for promoting community awareness and destigmatizing people's perceptions of homelessness. The other aspect of this outreach program is to have a drop-in space. So as people wander streets and if you are without housing, you don't necessarily have somewhere to go. And this is not the people that are staying in our shelter, because our shelters do operate 24/7. And so they're not required to leave our space. But these are the individuals that are being turned away from our shelter, A, because we're full right now, and we have been full for many weeks, or B, because they're not interested in coming to shelter, or for a variety of reasons are not able to access shelter. So we would hope to have a space that they can come to have, a meal. We currently operate a meal service out of our downtown shelter. We would like to move that outside of the shelter space because we see some conflict occurring, and really the two uses aren't compatible. We want to operate a shelter that is for the individuals staying in that shelter and not be bringing the members of the community into that shelter space. If we could have a standalone space that was designed purposely for members of the public to come in and out, it would be a much better service and have fewer conflicts. And so we're looking to work with our partners in the sector to offer this service, maybe have income support workers come to that drop-in space, maybe have individuals from Nova Scotia Health come in and really have the wraparound service come to the individuals who are in need, rather than expecting them to go to the providers themselves. And this drop-in space would offer those basic needs, as I talked about, food and water, hygiene products, and a safe space with someone to talk to. So just to be clear, we're currently operating a few hours a week out of our space in Kentville. It's not our perfect space, but it's what we're able to offer right now. And as I said, with a robust funding model, we're able to secure a more long-term space that is more suitable. We haven't identified exactly where that space is going to be yet, but the goal is to have it in a more urban area that is easily accessible on the bus route. And then our mobile team would have the opportunity to bring people to that drop-in space because we do have access to vehicles. And so we would be working as a coordinated system. So the specifics of our funding request, what I've done is I've calculated the expenses to run this program for 4 months, although I'll admit that January has passed us. And I've also deducted the amount that we've already been able to assemble in terms of funding from the Office of Mental Health and Addictions and the WAKE group. And I've taken the existing funding that's required and divided it among the 4 municipal units in Kings County according to uniform assessment, which I believe is a standard practice to determine proportionality of who would pay what. So of the remaining funds that are needed, which comes to $136,340, the proportion that would be allocated to the town of Wolfville is in the amount of $13,798. And as a funder, we would look to partner in a more robust way, and we would be held accountable for the use of those funds. We are going to be providing you with regular updates on our progress. We're going to establish key performance indicators and ensure that you're aware of exactly the type of accomplishments we are achieving. And we already see that staff members from the town give us a call when they're aware, and we really appreciate that. We value that partnership to say, we have information and we know there's somebody in need, and we know that you can provide the service that we can't. And we would love the ability to continue to respond to those calls, but we really truly need funding in order to do that in a way that has integrity. Because right now we have staff that are more or less doing it off the side of their desk. And so that's where I'm looking for the town to provide some funding to allow us to continue that relationship with town staff, with the bylaw officers, et cetera. And so that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Leanne, for all that information and the important work that you do for our community. I'm going to open the floor up to see if there's any questions. I can head this.
I guess I'm interested to know why we haven't got the numbers or the best guess of numbers, because last year it was, I think, December. And is that just surely the literal numbers are that much bigger than a year ago? What is your estimate?
So to my knowledge, the last time a service-based count was conducted was in November 2023. And I believe the number at that time was in the Annapolis Valley, or is it in Kings County, 231 individuals experiencing homelessness. By all accounts, that number was an underestimate. That the constraints of the study were such that there were many individuals that went uncounted or unaccounted for. I'm hopeful that the process we underwent in November was more robust, had more partners, had a further reach, that we will have a more accurate number. And I'm sure they're still processing. I believe there were over 800 forms filled out. Now that could have double counted individuals. So I don't want to mislead you to think that that was the number of individuals, but they're processing a lot of data. And so that's why we don't have the numbers just yet. But, off the side of our desk, we're already serving 9 to 12 individuals in Kings County with very little effort to go and find people. These are the people who are coming to us, who we've heard through kind of other sources. And I am sure that number would more than double if we had a robust program where we sought to connect with people. We know there are encampments. I think all of us can kind of see where some of the tents are. Because we're rural, it becomes very hidden. But as soon as we really start seeking out those individuals, we know, and these are just individuals who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness right now in the cold. I don't know if I answered your question. Unfortunately, it's not clear.
First of all, I just want to say, I really appreciate what you guys do. It's a handful that what you're doing, and I appreciate you taking it on. The question I would have to your budget or your line number, there was $136,000, and that is essentially to feed people. You're not sheltering anybody out of that.
Well, I would say a bulk of that is a staffing cost,
Right.
so that I have staffing to go out. Yep, some of it is supplies, so that we can feed people and have some money for gift cards and other essentials that really, part of it is life-sustaining essentials that we make sure people have food and warm clothes so that they can survive. The other aspect of providing supports is to be building trust and building a relationship. I'm somebody who's here to help you, and I'm going to ask nothing in return. the difference with a case management approach is that we're not going to keep coming week after week and giving more and more things. The idea is that we want to work with an individual to understand their situation, to say, how can we connect you with another source that's going to support you? And through that relationship and trust building, bring them into the system of care.
And I guess along with that, personally, I really believe that housing is a provincial issue, and I'm just wondering if you're getting any provincial funding for that 136,000.
So a portion that is not counted in the 136,000 is coming from the Office of Mental Health and Addictions. We have a 3-year contract for one employee who is a mental health outreach worker. So that is a secure 3-year funding for that one individual. What I need to do is build a team so that we're able to run the program in a robust way. We're in conversations with the province to determine if they're interested in funding this. Unfortunately, to my knowledge, there's not a provincial strategy for homelessness. So it's unclear to me if this is an aspect that they will fund. I've been told that we're able to have conversations with them come April once the provincial budget has been adopted. And so that's why I've really framed this as a winter response to support the most vulnerable citizens of our community right now.
Thank you. So my question is, you came up with a 13,000 for the model for work, Wolfville with the uniform assessment. So you have also a request in to municipality and Kentville. And so is this funding dependent on all 3 parties contributing?
So I've built a budget that I believe is what is needed to fund a robust program for the 4-month time. I'll admit we're now into 3 months remaining. And so I would say that in our ideal, we would be funded for the full 136,000, but that's not to say that we wouldn't be able to still run a program. We would have to scale the program if we received less funding. And yes, I have approached all municipal units. I understand that the town of Kentville has voted this down, the opportunity to fund this. I believe it's going to be debated and discussed at the municipality of Kings at their council meeting tonight. And I'm still working towards the opportunity to present to the town of Berwick Council.
Thank you. Thank you, Leanne, for the presentation. You do amazing work. So thank you for all you've done for us so far. I had a similar question to Deputy Mayor. So you have not spoken to MLA Van Axen at this time?
That's correct. I have not spoken to the MLA.
Okay. I have some questions that are probably more internal to us, but so would this then, and I do believe continuing coordinated access,
Yes.
is not in the VIC any longer. Am I correct in saying that?
I believe so.
Okay. So this would sort of replace that. Is that what the model in your head is?
Yes, and for clarity, coordinated access exists to connect individuals that are in need of housing supports with the housing support program. Because there was a gap, the coordinated access manager was operating a bit of a drop-in. What we're proposing is to operate that drop-in as a service provider, but still work closely with coordinated access. They just wouldn't be providing that aspect of the service.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have the report you sent, and it was very, very, it was nice to read all the facts and figures. Because of my question's about the timeline. So because we're already past January, it's now not a 4-month program, it's a 3-month program, but for the same dollars, or will it extend, still be 4 months, but just extend past, so it kind of takes us just out of the winter? That's my first question. Second question is, this is a winter response program, but although we have extreme cold, we also have extreme heat in the summer. So is this going to be something that will carry forward as a seasonal something? That's my question.
Right. Thank you for those questions. So it's my hope that we will continue to operate a mobile outreach program. I think that the drop-in center may be less needed in the summer months when the weather is fine. As I mentioned, we are under agreement with the province to operate extreme weather services. That would include extreme heat. And in the past, we've been able to partner with the town of Kentville in using their space, the rec center, and open the doors and staff a drop-in center, which is daytime only in for cooling. So I haven't been nimble enough to adapt the numbers to a 3-month response, but I think come the end of April, this service will be less needed, except for the need for mobile supports. So that's why I really framed it to continue to the end of April. So I would certainly be open to a 3/4 proposal. But it really comes down to scalability. I mean, we're a nonprofit organization and we will make things work with the money that we have. But the funding is really what we're asking for is to run a robust program that has the integrity that I believe we need.
I'm curious about the fact that Kentville turned you down. Does that mean that you would be seeking additional funds from the other parties within the group?
I have not increased the request, partly because, as we've just discussed, we're now down to a 3-month program. And we will just adapt our program to respond to the amount of money we have. And, while we are located in Kentville right now, the mobile outreach really has the ability to serve the county. And, not that we won't serve the people of Kentville. It's obviously very disappointing to us that they didn't see fit to respond to our request. But we will do what we can for the people that we serve to the best of our ability.
Was Kentville transparent about why they turned you down?
I am not clear on why we were turned down.
What was the outcome of the RFP that you were responding to? I think you'd mentioned that last time you presented with the interchurch.
So as I mentioned, the Wolfville and Area Interchurch Council, we were successful in acquiring funding, which is a portion of our mobile outreach needs. So that has allowed us to launch the mobile outreach for the month of January.
Okay.
And so it is accounting for a portion of our funding needs.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. I just check again. No more questions? No? Thank you so much for coming in today, Leanne. All right. So we will move on to staff reports for discussion. RFD 003-2025 aerial fire truck. Is there a motion on, do I put the motion? You want to put the motion on the floor? Is there a motion? Okay, there's a motion. Okay. There's 2 motions. Do we have those somewhere? Because we didn't. I have one motion. You have it?
I got the motion for the area.
Yep.
Want that now?
We should have put the motion on the floor before.
We can do the presentation.
Okay, you want to do the presentation? Okay. Take it away. Is it?
So I'd like to welcome Deputy Fire Chief Chad Schrader to the presentation desk as well. So I'm going to give the highlights of the RFD, and then Chad, of course, is here to answer any questions related to the proposal specifically. So the 2001 Tower 41 aerial fire truck has been in the Wolfville fleet since approximately 2010. It was bought as a used truck at that point in time and has served the town of Wolfville well since then. It's coming up to the end of its useful life, and as such, we need to make some considerations around its replacement. It's been part of the town's long-term capital planning for some time. A budget number of $2 million was placed on the acquisition of a new truck in approximately 2018. Since then, as everyone knows, has been a topic around this table many times, prices have increased drastically on basically everything, but on equipment costs and infrastructure costs in particular. So due to those price increases, what we're looking at now is a estimated price to replace that truck of $3.3 million. We're also looking at a lead time of approximately 4 years from point of order placement to delivery of that apparatus, which is why it's being brought to you folks now. Because once procurement is completed, it would take a 4-year delivery time. So meaning if it was ordered in this fiscal year, it would be delivered in likely in the summer of 2029. So the need to purchase a new truck is outlined in your RFD, but I'll highlight a couple of key pieces. One, of course, the truck is approaching the end of its useful life. We also have a need for compliance with modern safety and emissions standards, which the existing Tower 41 will no longer do the longer it's in service. The increase in the capital budget is driven primarily from demand outpacing supply in North America. The suppliers of these apparatus are quite concentrated from only American manufacturers. And then, of course, rapidly escalating material and labor costs have driven those prices up considerably. I mean, it's also been some time since that truck has been looked at since 2018 as far as replacement costs, and we all know we're in a different world on the basis of costs since pre-COVID. It also doesn't help that because we're buying this truck out of the United States, the fluctuations in the Canadian dollar also affect procurement. A new aerial fire truck will continue to support the growth of the town and the surrounding area. As council knows, the Wolfville Fire Department doesn't just serve the town of Wolfville, it serves a significant area around the town of Wolfville in Kings County. It will also it'll support the growing needs of the overall area. On the financial side of things, this purchase would utilize 100% of the capital reserve for fire equipment at the time of purchase, and then require additional funding, likely from debt financing of approximately 1.3 million if we continue to fund that capital account in the way that we have over the past number of years. We would exhaust it completely and then have to use debt financing for upwards of 1.3 million. So those are the highlights of the report. Happy to try to address any questions that you have, and of course any questions related to the apparatus specifically we'll defer to our deputy chief.
Yes, it is a shame that it has to come from the States, but if one received it in 2029, you might be in a new presidential situation by then anyway. But presumably, if you lay the order now, if there are such things as tariffs imposed on things like that, surely fire trucks would be exempt from such activities.
So I anticipated that question. And I'm going to stay out of the US politics, but we did reach out to Technofu 1200 Degrees, which is our Quebec dealer that we purchased the apparatus through. And they reached out to E1, which is the manufacturer located in Ocala, Florida. At this time, they do not feel the tariffs are going to have effect on their operation at all. Of course, it's an evolving situation, and we know things can change with the strike of a pen. So it seems, but at this time, it is our belief that the tariffs will not affect an emergency response vehicle.
Just to add to that, should council endorse the recommendations that are in the staff report, as part of our procurement policy, if we go out to market for this apparatus and it's 10% above the 3.3 million that we've estimated, it comes back here for decision. So there is a control. If we do go to market and we see, whether it be, geopolitically related or any other reason, we see a price hike, it does come back here for final decision.
And just on the price, the intent here is much like it was with our pumper tanker. You are aware we came early for that as well because of the lead time and because of the price and changes. The provider and the distributor anticipate another price increase in March. So our intent is to try to get this thing locked in before that price increase. I think it's clear to everyone and everything that we do, prices aren't going to go down for the foreseeable future. So it's our intent to get this tender out, have it reviewed, have it awarded before any potential price increase, just from a supplier perspective.
Is there a provision in the contract? So right now our dollar is probably at its lowest. It's been in a bit. So in 4 years' time, if the dollar is better, does that reflect in the contract?
I can't answer that question.
I
might have
can't
to-
answer that question either, but Director of Finance Hopkins and the chief have been working on some other avenues for that. And again, this is the purpose of today is we're not awarding a tender here. Before we go out to tender, we're seeking approval we know it's going to cost more than we asked for. So rather than award the tender and ask for more money, we're gonna do it the proper way and ask for the money before we go out to tender. So as part of that, we'll take those comments back and we'll try to have that negotiated through the tendering process.
We'll mitigate as much risk as we can.
Right.
There's, if there's provisions that we would get the benefit of a valued Canadian dollar, then we would get the flip side of that as well. So but we'll mitigate as much risk as we can if the purchase moves forward.
And just a comment, it sounds like a lot of money is and it is, but over 11 years, the 1.3 is just about $115,000 a year, which, I mean, is still an increase, but it's been a long time since we looked at that price. So it looks like a massive jump, but from 2018 to delivery date of 2029, that's a big time span.
Thank you for the math. As usual, thank you. I'm good.
I just got a couple of questions on the mechanics of this. Can you just clarify, I guess, for the public record, why you need this truck?
Sure. So currently we have a 100-foot platform, and anyone that was around the table when we made that decision, I'm not sure anyone was, that truck was purchased used at the time because we were in an immediate need for a truck. The old truck was not serviceable, and so we had an immediate need. So we went out to market, and because of the station door, we were basically, this is it. This is what fits. So we purchased that truck and made it work. It's a 100-foot platform. What we're reviewing now, because of the development of the town and the East End project and all of the multi-unit dwellings that are starting to pop up around us, is a 95-foot quint. So it holds more water, but it also has a smaller footprint for us to be able to set up in these more concentrated streets like we're starting to see. We're starting to narrow our streets in town to, the active walkways and things like that and the bicycle lanes. So this truck will allow us to set it up in a much smaller footprint. And with East End development and the right for the multi-unit dwellings and all the other multi-unit dwellings that are popping up, this truck will be one of our first out trucks, whereas the current apparatus, because of its footprint to set it up, it's really restrictive in where we can actually place that piece of equipment. So we're designing this with the intent that the town is continuing to grow and it's continuing to be more concentrated. So the footprint where we can set these things up is smaller. So this will allow us to do that. The other thing is our current truck only holds about 250 gallons of water. The new apparatus will hold up to 600 gallons of water. So it'll basically make it front run ready, so to speak, so that we can get out the door quickly with it and get it set up in place.
Great, thank you. And I guess my other comment, this is a comment, I guess, it'd be really to Director Hopkins, that hopefully we're gonna revisit how we're gonna finance this, and maybe we're gonna increase our reserves. Because I mean, carrying a debt of 1.3 million, I know you can do the math on how it is. It's still something we should be, it's 5 years from now. It would be nice if we could at least revisit that.
No, absolutely. That $1.3 million is also bumping up our current fire equipment reserve by an extra $100,000 from 400 to 500 per year. Plus what Chad had mentioned, Todd and I had spoken, and he had gone back to one of the potential manufacturer or brokers for the manufacturer and questioned whether or not how we could position the actual procurement of the unit. So we're dealing with a Canadian broker who's dealing with a US manufacturer. So we were talking about US funding and whether we could somehow procure earlier as far as the US funding, maybe get some futures involved, and or whether or not the best option is for us to do a straight purchase, or if there's some other kind of staged purchasing we can do as far as putting a deposit in, if it would be a cash upfront discount, and whether or not we would prefer to pay in US monies versus Canadian monies. Plus, there's a little bit of a buffer built in as well, assuming some of the pricing is going to go up. I know in the previous year when we were doing budget, my predecessor, Director McLean, had already bumped that particular fire truck, aerial truck, up to I think $2.2 million in the anticipation that he knew that there was going to be a 10% increase already back in 2022. So I think this is something that has been growing and something that just now that they've actually we're at the stage that we're ready to purchase and or order and get the specifications for that particular ladder, aerial ladder out there. This is where we are. $1.3 million. I think council has to consider all of the capital components of our budgets going forward. But to the CAO's point earlier, this I believe is more a question of to put the tender out for pricing versus actually making the purchase.
Are there any more questions?
You don't have to live here very long to know that the largest buildings in this town are the university. Have you, or has anybody ever thought of asking the university for a contribution, given that they are probably potentially one of the beneficiaries of this sort of truck?
Great big smile too.
I can see that coming a mile away. Yeah. So historically, no, that is, to my knowledge, that discussion has not occurred. It's something that we can entertain, and we have to also recognize that the relationship between the town and the university is large and wide in breadth. But it is something that we can potentially approach with the university.
Most of our calls for service are in town and the surrounding communities. Very rarely are we getting a call for
So I'm busy reading Wendy Robichaud's novel about the burning of the second college hall, which happened in 1920. And that was a different fire hall, even. And at that point, it was right after the First World War, there was a fire brigade on campus. Like they expected that there would be issues, as well as Wolfville Fire Department. So there were lots of people there to fight, but they didn't have really any equipment. And it was all people running in and running out and endangering their lives. So things have changed. And I really feel like we don't have a choice here. We have to do the right thing. So that's save our money.
Thank you. Any more questions? No. So CAO, put the motion, draft motion on the floor that is up on the screen. Okay.
Thank you. I would move that council approve an increase in capital budget from 2 million to 3.3 million for the replacement of the 2001 Tower 41 aerial fire truck. That council directs staff to proceed with the development of a tender in accordance with towns. Oh, that's two motions. Okay.
So stop after.
Stop, full stop. How's that?
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Butler? Any more questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that is carried unanimously.
I would move that council directs staff to proceed with the development of a tender in accordance with town's procurement policy 140-001 to solicit bids from qualified vendors for the purchase of a new aerial fire truck.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Elliott, any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Chad. So we're moving right along. I'm looking at Director Hopkins for the next item, the review of the draft operation plan. Oh, we're oh, sorry. I am so sorry. My eyes. I don't have my glass on. Sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Need my glasses, but go ahead, Barb.
Thank goodness for Brittany. I just want to make sure folks can hear me. And I think I'll. Want to make sure my mic is great. Thank you so much through the Deputy Mayor and Council. I'm going to run through with you a presentation that outlines the work that we've been doing on our new accessibility plan. And we're doing it in this format because this is a pretty chunky piece of work. So for March, you will receive an information report with the draft plan, as long as the Accessibility Advisory Committee approves that to go to council. That will happen on Monday night. Fingers crossed, it's looking good. But in advance of you seeing that report, I want you to have a little bit more awareness of the work, the reason why we're doing the work, and kind of what will come from that. We're following a similar process at the committee meeting or at the council meeting in a couple of weeks, when I bring forward a similar presentation outlining the work that's been done on the equity and anti-racism plan. So let me just. So we have currently an accessibility plan here within the town. It's the second iteration of it. The town of Wolfville was the first town, village, or municipality to have an accessibility plan in place. We were the pilot community to do that work. So this is now our third round. And we're doing this plan because there's a real need for the province to be accessible. So we in Nova Scotia have the highest rate of disability in Canada. So we think about it in terms of 1 in 3 persons in Nova Scotia are living with disability. And within our committee and within the town, we try and kind of understand this through the social model of disability. So understanding that people are disabled by the environment. We're disabled by barriers. So for example, I don't hear very well. I only have 50% of my hearing. Most of the time that's fine. But if I'm in an environment where the heat pump's really loud or there's a lot of background noise, I might have to modify that environment. I might have to remove that barrier so I'm less disabled. So the social model of disability and how we view disability now also includes things like
chronic pain. It includes understanding that folks who are on the spectrum, folks who are neurodiverse, folks who suffer with mental health issues. These are all different forms of disability that we're trying to understand and remove barriers around. So again, keep in mind, we do this work because 1 in 3 people in the province live with disability. So we also have a responsibility to do this work because we are a prescribed public sector body. So through the Provincial Accessibility Act, the province is empowered to prescribe public sector bodies. And they took that step around the time that we were starting on the pilot work that we did a number of years ago. So we are a prescribed public sector body. Our partners at Acadia have also been prescribed under the Act. So that means that the work we do is non-negotiable. We need to think of this as critical infrastructure, just like roads, sewer, and all of those other pieces. And the key work that we do through this plan and our approach to accessibility within the town is we identify, we remove, and we prevent barriers that would disable people. And we do this with the accessibility plan as our guide. So what you see on the screen is our second accessibility plan, which when I started with the town, we were just kind of working through that process. We got it done, and then we immediately started working on the next iteration. And these are 3-year plans. This is a really exciting checklist of pieces that I've been working through since we started this review process. I'm not going to bore you with it, but we are getting very close to that last box on the bottom. And the goal is to have the plan approved by council before the end of March and published online. So our process for doing this work, we went back to the current accessibility plan and we checked in on the commitments. And I'll be coming back in April with a full report for folks on progress. And we made good progress. You've had that report every year from staff. And at one point in time, it was Kelton, and another point in time, it would have been Mike McLean doing that update for you. We've done a lot of public engagement throughout the process. Through the engagement, we've developed kind of our proposed areas of focus, the things that we're going to try and work on over the next 3 years. The draft plan has been a high-level review has happened by the committee. They've had the draft sent to them. Some edits have been sent back. And on Monday night, we're going to see if we can wrap it all up. And then that draft plan will come to the committee of the whole next month with a recommendation from the committee to approve the plan. And I'll just note that the image that you see on the screen is one of our commitments that we've been making, which is to have more ASL, so American Sign Language, provided at community events. So this was from about 1.5 years ago at the Pride Picnic at Waterfront Park. And we had an amazing individual who is helping us with ASL, making that event more welcoming and more accessible to all. So as I said, the progress report will be happening. I can tell you that we have one outstanding item that has been driving me up the wall and probably everybody else that I've been talking to about it. So that outstanding item is an automatic door opener at the recreation center. It is installed. It's not currently opening a door. And through my learning, I've understood now that that is because we need a fiber upgrade and there's a security component and a tech component, but we have a commitment from staff to keep working forward on that, and we will get that operational. So the new plan, which is about to be presented to folks next month, you're also going to notice, if you've seen previous iterations of the plan, we're taking a pretty different approach. And what we wanted to do this time around was really focus on what we were hearing from the community. What does the community want? Where are the barriers that people are struggling with, and how do we make changes? Again, understanding what we need to do is identify, remove, and reduce these barriers. So giving you a high level kind of understanding of a lot of the feedback that we got, we heard from a lot of folks in the community who are aging in place. So folks who are getting older, they consider Wolfville to be home. They want to stay in Wolfville. They're experiencing challenges when it comes to getting around the community. They might not yet feel that they are at a point where they would qualify for an accessible parking pass or parking permit, so they could use accessible spots. But they might not have an opportunity to park as close as they might need to in different locations. We've heard multiple times about the condition of our sidewalks and how that impacts people for mobility. We also hear the challenges that people might be very comfortable walking downtown, but getting back up the hill can be a challenge. And that's not always accessible to folks. So this is kind of the theme that we were working with this time around. So it's not necessarily somebody who we might traditionally consider as living with disability. It might not be somebody using a mobility device, but somebody who is experiencing those barriers in the community in which they live and work. So the engagement, as I said, is ongoing. Everybody smiles at that. This is Birgit, who's, Birgit is, I think, our longest serving accessibility advisory committee member. And I can't think of a more amazing person to focus in this slide. So this photo was taken at our open house that we did last spring, where we did a lot of engagement. We specifically went to community and we asked, what are the barriers that you're facing? Where are they? How do they impact you? Just so we can start to help to understand what we can shift to make life more accessible. So we do engagement at public events. Through all of our projects, our big projects that we've done, for example, the Parks and Open Spaces Master Planning process, there were a lot of accessibility considerations and a lot of feedback coming through to staff. We've done community surveys, and every time emails come in to council and to staff, concerns with street conditions, road conditions, sandwich boards, whatever it's coming in, if it's something to do with accessibility, we're considering that as engagement. We always consider that feedback, and that informs the work we do go forward. Staff definitely are starting to speak more openly about the challenges that we face, working in our physical spaces and different work environments, or things that we experience out and about in the community. And then we also have our Accessibility Advisory Committee who provide us with inputs. Through this work, the province asks that we divide our work into kind of 5 pillars, and they are built environment, transportation, communications, employment, and goods and services. And I always say I have to think of goods and services as programs and services. So if that helps kind of understand that a little bit more, think of it that way. So for our built environment, and these are now all the areas that the committee has been kind of working towards. Public engagement has indicated these are areas we might want to start to focus on. And so these are the pieces that will be presented in the plan to you next month, the things that we want to start working on and make progress on. So top of built environment is a sidewalk conditioned index tool. So we know that there are some challenges with our sidewalks, but as we know from the meeting we had a few weeks ago, starting the operations planning process, it's not as simple as just thinking about the surface. We have to think about so much more. It ties into asset management planning, but inevitably we have to come up with a consistent way to assess the quality of our sidewalks that will help us manage those assets go forward. So it's not just a quick response to there's a buckled piece of asphalt. It's what's the larger approach and how do we really use an equitable lens as we start to make these big decisions. If we have a tool internally, it means the recommendations we're making to council will be that much stronger. So that piece is being worked on. And everything that's here as well, staff has built consensus around this. We feel it's achievable, and we feel that these are pieces that we can deliver on within the 3 years of the plan. We're currently doing a public washroom assessment. We have different washrooms throughout the community. Some of them we have accessible signage up on, like Railtown, for example. but we're not sure if we're actually meeting all of the current accessibility standards. Town Hall, our washroom here, is not accessible. It's not barrier-free. And we had thought that we might be moving into a different space sooner rather than later. As those conversations have become a little bit more quiet, we are thinking about thinking ahead as well as understanding the province has set out some pretty clear expectations around being accessible by 2030. So we're having folks come in and assess that public washroom. That assessment, as well as the assessment of our other sites, will help us understand what we might need to do to remove those barriers and increase the level of accessibility. Council is aware, it looks like we'll be able to move forward with a washroom change station at Reservoir Park that will come with a high degree of accessibility. We saw that with the build at the Visitor Information Center, and that's something that's been really well received by the community. For transportation, as some of you will recall in the last term of council, some work was done in consideration of a microtransit system. So the best way to describe that is think smaller buses running on kind of regular routes right within the town. So we have at the staff level, we've been working on project charters. We're looking at breathing some life back into that and really getting a sense of how do we do that and when can we do that? Active transportation, of course, Devin and his team have been doing some amazing work with support from Alex, really moving ahead with our notion of active transportation. And the really great thing about that project is that we've been working and modeling kind of the province's standards around understanding that that's not just bike lanes. It's providing opportunities for people to roll and to stroll in a way that doesn't involve using motorized vehicles. Communications is a big piece. We've done a lot of things over the past number of years, everything from image descriptions and social media to redoing our website. Lindsay and some folks from the planning department have been working really hard on a wayfinding project that has had a high level of scrutiny and accessibility review. More information is going to come forward on that. And again, we're going to keep up with that commitment to bring in more ASL interpretation at community events. For employment, and so that means employment within the town. So for employment, we are going to be moving forward with more accessibility foundations training for our staff. Council will be welcome to do that as well. I'm now certified as a trainer, so I'm happy to do that. It takes about 3 hours, and I look forward to sharing everything that I've learned. We're also looking to, as we start to do a little bit more of a deep dive into some of our human resources policies, we're understanding that we need really clear policy around when it's okay to work from home and how we offer and provide accommodations that might be needed. And this is really around the notion of we need stuff embedded in policy so that no employee feels that they have to negotiate these things independently. And also, this will help us recruit in a different way and remove some of the barriers that people might currently face to joining our staff team in terms of employment. For goods and services or programs or services, we're continuing with a commitment to use barrier-free program space. So for example, if we are supporting programming in the community, a dance class, a fitness class, it's really important that we're providing that and supporting that happening in a barrier-free space. So not upstairs in a location without an elevator, but just somewhere so we can remove those barriers. The recreation center door opener is on there. I'm really committed to that one. The other piece that's there is program descriptions. This is something that Valley Pride models really effectively. So every event listing that they have been doing, they give a full description of what's the auditory experience like. What might the experience be for somebody who doesn't want a lot of stimulation? What are the physical barriers that somebody might face? So that people have a good understanding before they get to an event of what they might experience so that they can be there and be present. And if it doesn't sound like a great program for them, it also gives an opportunity for them to communicate in advance so that we can start to move things in a positive direction. The other piece that has shown up here, as council will be aware, we have received a significant amount of feedback around the electric scooters that landed in our community last spring. That has come up through the lens of accessibility on a continuous basis. So just as we have regulatory pieces in place for sandwich boards and placement on sidewalks, we're committed to exploring what a regulatory framework might look like in regards to the e-scooters. Again, just ensuring that nobody's impacting anybody else in a way that would limit mobility within the community. So that's kind of what we're proposing to tackle over the next 3 years. You will see the draft in March. This is our little kind of visual representation of the 5 areas that need to work together to increase access throughout our community. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Barb. So just for clarification, this will go to the Accessibility Advisory Committee on Monday and then for approval and then sent to the Committee of Whole in March for council approval. Okay. Anyone open the floor to any questions?
Barb knows this already, but I just kind of wanted to send it out on a level that we might want to consider down the line. I was contacted by a resident recently about a walkway into a local business from our sidewalk on Main Street. And it's definitely both a safety and an accessibility hazard, in my opinion, not that I'm an expert, but apparently we have no regulatory function when something like this occurs, breakdown of the walkway, to make it enforceable. Like there is no way to knock on the door and say this needs fixing ASAP. So maybe down the line we might want to consider adding something like that to the town regulations.
It's hard to believe. No, it's hard to believe. No, it's just hard to believe we're already in the 3rd version of this plan. It seems to, the 3 years seem to go by very quickly. So, and it's nice to see where we've started and where we are at now. So thank you everybody on the Accessibility Committee and Barb for all your hard work and council also.
As the oldest guy in the room, I'm well appreciated the comment about the fact that the elderly can go shopping, but it's getting back home if they happen to live on one of the avenues near the top, which was one of the reasons why we moved down to Marshhawk. The trouble is that now Marshhawk is largely full and there are no other sort of low-level areas that are safe from flooding where housing could take place that would be suitable for the people in their golden years. So that idea of microtransit is actually rather a nice one. But of course, it's going to be quite expensive. Is there any sort of funding from the province for that sort of thing?
Perhaps our CAO would like to answer that question.
So notionally, yes. There have been various funding programs for transit that can be allocated to capital and operations over the last number of years. You'll recall in the last provincial election, I believe there were multiple platform commitments related to transit, local transit as well. So notionally, yes. The challenge is that those are typically competitive and program based, meaning you are competing with other municipalities or other program areas, and they can end at any time. So notionally, yes, there is support out there.
I'll add to that because I don't think it's just the elderly that need to live at the bottom of the hill. If you've ever pushed two children in a stroller or a child and a dog and you can come up, well, I live at the top of the hill. It's not easy. And, and carrying, feeding a 16-year-old boy, I need a trunk full of groceries. Carrying those up the hill is also tough. So I think it's great for everyone. So, but definitely elderly, but lots of us for sure can use that.
Thank you for that. Any more questions? No? Okay, so that was just for information. I'm just gonna call for a quick recess, a break right now. What are we looking at, like 10 minutes? 10 minutes? Just a quick 10-minute break. Thank you. So are we? So we are back. Thank you. And I guess I'm looking over at CAO. So I will let you take it over. Thank you.
Oh, my mic's not on. How's that? 20-second delay? Okay. I'll just pause for a moment. Check, check. Coming in. It's not on? Second here. It's on. Okay. Great. So again, the operations plan is intended to be the narrative document that speaks to the work enabled by the operations budget, and council will see their first view of the draft operation and capital budget now on the 18th of February, which is rescheduled from the 11th. So this document again is very much in draft. There are a couple of distinctions from previous operations documents that you've seen. In a moment, I'll go through everything here to solicit your feedback. In this document, we've taken the advice and the feedback from council during our first budget session, and we're really trying to tell the narrative story of the town of Wolfville. We're trying to talk about the work that we're planning to do, the people who are planning to do it, how it's going to be done, and really put the council and the public as the reader of this document as to who this document is for. In that light, we've adjusted it slightly to speak about how our services are delivered and positioned our various projects and work in the way that they're delivered through our business department, through our departments. There's still a lot to be adjusted here. Any kind of plain language, grammatical, formatting, pictures, all that kind of stuff, that review will be done very much at the end of the process, just to make sure that we've got it where we want it. But this opportunity, this period right now is just an opportunity for you folks to see your first view of it, identify if there are things that you're excited about that have been missed, so that we can have those for consideration as we move forward. So with that, I'll just jump in. So I'm not going to go through all these details, but essentially, again, we've positioned this document to tell a little bit of the story of Wolfville, who we are, and what the town itself is and does in support of the community. Town council and strategic direction is included. Beautiful picture from your almost thought inauguration, but you're swearing in there a couple of months ago. You can fire away questions right now if you want.
Oh, there we go. Just on that page, Councillor Elliott's last name is spelled incorrectly. And it's not, oh, sorry. And she's not listed below the photo either.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. And I guess there's a few others, but those were the two I noticed.
So that's all. Every mistake you see in this document is on me. So, and all of the things you like are on them. We'll thank you for pointing those out. We'll make sure that this document is given a very good editing before it's actually comes to the end to catch all the errors and omissions. This section has been updated from previous documents just by positioning council's role through this, describing council's role in this section, and of course, pointing out you folks, who the council is. Other than that is largely similar to what you've seen in previous documents around the vision, mission, and key principles of the town. The only difference is that the strategic priorities of the last council have been removed. And there's reference to the strategic planning session that you folks will undertake in the spring, that will be done and then included once this is once that's ready. Key principles are the same as before, yeah. So again, your strategic planning process very well may adjust these things, but these are all the same as they were from the previous council. The only thing that's been omitted at this stage are the specific priorities of the previous council. In this section, we get into, again, the narrative around describing what the town does and how it does it. So how the operations of the town are actually delivered. Part of the reason for a move in this direction is one of the challenges that we continuously face is an unfamiliarity of the general public as to what the town actually does. Yeah, it's faced at almost every day, almost every turn, and this we're using this document as one of multiple tools to try to educate and inform town residents and the general public as to this is what the town does, this is how we do it. Yeah.
Do we consider putting something in there around what we don't do, maybe, like broadly speaking? Or
we can look at something of that nature. I mean,
without being kind of negative?
yeah, I mean, we can probably look at those most common things that we hear that you should be doing.
Yes.
We can probably look at adding some narrative around these are the things that are often brought to the municipality's door.
Yeah.
And they're actually not our responsible. We'd have to figure out how to exactly to say
Yeah.
that, but we could look at some sort of a small narrative piece just to identify those most common things that we're asked about.
And I was just thinking, as we work on our communication strategy, that could be included in this section as well, like how we communicate outward from the town, not just like what we do within this room and town staff, but how we
tell people
and communicate.
Okay, we can take a look at that. Just taking some notes here as we go. Then we get into program service delivery. So a lot of we don't have project charters in this document, just to keep it somewhat readable and brief. The document would be hundreds of pages long if we included project charters. At this stage, we're looking at including them as appendices, but even at that, this document will be very, very long if we include them. So we're considering whether or not they should live somewhere else potentially. But what this document does have are tables that summarize all of the projects for which we have charters and are intending to do. As council knows, there are also municipal services that are provided by entities that are not the town. So we've got a reference to that here early in the document around solid waste management, public transit, emergency management, library services, regional economic development, and community fiber op. So those are intermunicipal organizations that provide a municipal service that we don't directly provide. We provide them in partnership. We also have yet other programs and services that are provided through community partners. So this is not an exhaustive list at this stage. We'll continue to work through this part of the document to add those other service partners before the final draft. This next section will speak to the financial condition, taxation, and expenditures of the town. A lot of what you see here is the information that was presented to council at our first budget meeting. This section is intended to point towards all of the key trends that really inform the financial decision-making of council and the town. So its intention is to share with the public, these are the parameters, these are the lines on the street that we have to recognize and respect as we make our decisions. So that's the intention of that section. As they're prepared and as council gives them approval, we will also add key information related to the 2025 rates and levies, high-level breakdown of expenditures and revenues, some notable significant expenditure categories, revenue categories, key changes from the last fiscal year, things of that nature. Things, again, that are important for the general public to know because they influence our plans and our decisions. And then we get into our service department. So all of our projects are broken down by the department. So these projects that you'll see in these tables forthcoming, they are not prioritized. They are on these tables and on these pages basically randomly. There's no intent behind where they're placed. They're not all necessarily in the proper department that they will live in the final draft. Again, while our service departments deliver our services, a lot of what we do is collaborative in nature. So you will have multiple departments collaborating on many of these initiatives going forward. So you might see for instance, public washroom review is right now in the office of the CAO. A chunk of that work is being led by Barb. Some of that work is also being coordinated out of planning. Implementation of a lot of that work will be coming out of public works. So where that projects like that actually land in the final document is still a little bit up in the air. As we put each of these sections together, again, the intent with the narrative above the project charters was to give some sense as to what these departments do, their mandates, the day-to-day activities that take up their time, and who in those departments are involved with this work. Right now, we have a listing of staff in the document that may or may not stay. The intention behind listing staff is, again, to say, these are people who are in your community, serving your town, doing this work, and taking a great deal of pride in it. So for other reasons, we may have to take names out as a certain point, but we're still exploring whether or not those names stay in the document. And then we have a listing of the various projects that are proposed to occur this fiscal year. So in short, we've got a project title, a description of what is to be, what we're doing and why we're doing it, what we're anticipating to see as an output of that particular project, and then if there's a budget tie to that project. So in some instances, you'll see a number based on primarily a contracted service or a funded service. And in other instances, you'll see staff-led. The purpose of having those two things there is, again, to show if we're not budgeting for a contracted service, these are the things that are occupying the time of Wolfville staff. So again, it gives you a sense, gives the reader a sense of the workload and the various pieces that are being moved forward by the organization and how they're being moved forward. So at this point, I mean, what's left in the document now is essentially a compendium of the various projects that we're proposing to move forward this fiscal year. So I don't have to go through them one by one. What I might do is put them on the page, speak to the title, and if anybody has any questions about a particular project, then we can deal with the question. Or if you've got a question, again, if you feel that there should be something there that you don't see there, then we can deal with that. And as we go to the various departments, I'll probably also invite the directors to come join me here so they can speak to those projects as well. So starting with the Office of the CAO. A lot of these things you've already heard of, but we've captured them again. Public washroom review, which is coming out of the accessibility plan. This is bylaw review is the overall project title, but this is really a bit of a regulatory review. It isn't necessarily going to come out with bylaw changes in the instance of e-scooters. But we've also added to this section a review of the dog bylaw specifically for the designated off-leash areas based on the concerns that have been received from off-leash provisions in primarily in Reservoir Park. So that review will take place this year to see if those provisions for off-leash should be changed in Reservoir Park in particular, but we'll take a look at other areas as well. And then HR needs and service assessment is there as well. Policy review, again, focusing on things that have been identified in other plans. Sidewalk condition index, continuation of soups and sides, intermunicipal fire services agreement renewal in station location, intermunicipal service agreement for King's Transit and Valley Waste Resource Management. Long name, strategic planning for municipal council, operational planning to review this process that we're going through right now and make any adjustments going forward. Organizational training and development. If I don't hear any questions, I'm just going to keep going. Yep. We can try it. Yep.
I'm just trying to save you some.
Make it a little more simple. Yeah.
Just point it up like that kind of thing.
You hear that?
Yeah. Project.
Yeah, everybody use their outdoor voice.
Yeah.
Try to talk loud. Just going back to the bylaw review, because this sort of impacts us, us boots on the ground. When do we expect, or how are we working through the e-scooters and the off-leash? Right now.
Yeah, so the specifics of those reviews, we're still working through them. But on the e-scooters, so our director of planning is going to be in contact with the owner of the company and share some of the concerns that have been raised, both from the public and the concerns that we have, as well with how that operation is working in Wolfville, to see if we can get a change in behavior or see some changes to that service delivery model without a regulatory approach. Depending on how successful we are and what we need going forward, we can consider a regulatory approach beyond that. So that the first step really is that outreach to the business owner. And then we'll assess the steps forward if we need to pursue a regulatory approach. We don't have a timeline right now on the off-leash provision, review of the off-leash provisions of the dog control bylaw, but we should have that in the coming month or so.
So I'm sort of assuming it's not on the weather list, so obviously being used right now, and then as people are starting to swim at Reservoir Park, they have more answers. Not to sort of force you into a corner and pick something, but I mean, those are the questions that I'm going to get a lot, and I'm sure other people are too. So
Yeah, so we're still, we're like other aspects of this plan. This is council's first view of it. We're still working out some of the timeline details on a lot of these various projects. So while we've identified them as something that we do have to work through this year, and we are aware of, you know, the use of Reservoir Park and the use of e-scooters will very much be seasonal. We're still working out exactly the timeline to move those pieces forward. Please absolutely feel free to share that kind of feedback, but I'm not going to have specific answers for all of them related to exactly when work is going to start and when work is going to end. By the time you're asked to approve this, we will have that information.
So the way that this reads, the way that this reads to me is kind of, here are the things that we are committed to getting done or trying to get done this calendar year.
This fiscal year, right?
This fiscal year. These are our projects.
Right.
And I love that. I love that we're putting that out there. It's like, these are the details of what we're actually going to do. That's very impactful. Just kind of broadly speaking, when I read through it, I found it confusing the way it's broken up by department. So for someone who's not necessarily familiar with the organization of the town who reads this, and thinking from what we heard at the door, it might make sense to categorize it more based on project type. So for example, infrastructure, sidewalks, roads, parking, crosswalks, those were all kind of like big concerns. Stormwater, like that was the stuff that everyone was talking about. Is there an opportunity to categorize the projects based on those types of things? So for example, in your section, you've got sidewalk index, but then we also talk about sidewalk repair in the engineering section. So, having a section that's like sidewalks, and this is specifically what we're doing for sidewalks. We're going to have the Kent sidewalk's going to get redone. We're going to do a sidewalk index project, and we're going to add a sidewalk to Marshall, for example.
Yeah. So short answer is yes. We've had discussion at senior leadership on a couple of occasions now to do exactly what you've described as to how do we group or categorize these projects so that they are at a glance a little bit, the reader can see kind of what kinds of projects are there. So we're still, whether that be a color coding in the tables, or we're still exploring what our options are to be able to do something like that. And likewise, we also recognize there are related or very similar projects that are captured in multiple sections, and we're going through to be able to bring those pieces together. Yeah.
I felt like there was a lot captured in the supporting document, council, what we heard at the door, that referenced, so some of the things in there, for example, painting on Highland, it said this is been referenced in the operational plan, but then when you go to the operational plan, there's no reference to that project. So there were a number of things in that detailed document that were not reflected in the plan. I found that happened a lot. I think some of the detail from the detailed document is missing in the project. And I was wondering if we had a better, I think that relates back to my first point, we had a better way of categorizing what we're talking about for the projects, then we could have that additional layer of detail. Because I think when people are reading this, the first thing they're going to do is go and say, what's going to happen on my street? And they're going to look and see, right? And I think we want to have that kind of detail in there. I would like to see that. Yeah.
So we will have to provide, I think we're gonna have to go back to the mics. Yeah, moving the mic around the room.
It's okay, I tried.
So yeah, we're again, the purpose of this document is to provide as much appropriate detail as we can. We also have to face kind of the realities of delivering multiple projects under a condensed period of time with finite resources. So in some instances, if we know we're going to do something, we can be specific about that detail. In other instances, we may not be absolutely clear at this point in time if we can provide a specific thing. And therefore, some of those projects are kept a little bit more ambiguous in an effort to say, you know, under promise and over deliver versus the opposite. So we want to be, you know, if it's landing here, we want to have a high degree of comfort that we're going to be able to do it. And if it's one of those kind of things that's a little bit on the periphery, then we'd rather kind of be a little bit less descript and then over deliver on that.
So perhaps in the document, this operational plan document, this is like, these are the projects that we have committed to working on. And then I think for council, it might be nice to see a more fleshed out plan that includes the stuff that was in the detailed, here's what we heard at the door document. That is really clear, like, this is what's going in the operational plan, and it's in the operational plan. And then this needs ongoing assessment or continuing to be looked at, because going through the detailed document, there were lots of cases that said, this is being assessed, this is being assessed. And reading through that, I'm kind of like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that's something that we're looking at this year, or we're not looking at it this year? And it's just knowing what the status of that particular thing is, I think.
So we can be more clear on that, because in instances it's both. Like it's being assessed and there will be action on it, or it's being assessed and based on that assessment there won't be action on it.
Right.
So we can be a little bit more clear on those things.
Okay. All right. That was all well, I have more specific feedback in other sections, but that was my broad feedback.
Yeah. So I've seen it done both ways, specifically by project and specifically by department. There is no perfect way, because then everything seems to get missed, or well, not everything. There are things that get missed in no matter what way you do it. There's no perfect layout because there's so much overlap. However, if it's whatever way it's laid out, so if this is the way it's laid out, the connection to say, and maybe this is an accessibility thing too, I'm not sure, but if it says bylaw review and bylaw review shows up in parks, then those two things go together, or there's a notation that says this is further described or connected to X. So there's a lineage between the two, or something that ties the two together. I like this layout personally, because it does give me all of those details, because when you did it by project, you didn't know who was doing what, and you didn't even know who to contact. So there's no perfect way. So whatever way we do it, let's just make sure that they line up or have things together.
I'm not necessarily suggesting that it should be by project. I just think for the public that's coming to read the document, there should be something that highlights what it is that they're going to really care about, which is like, what is the town doing about all these infrastructure things that we raised? And when I read this, it doesn't come out. That's
So we'll that is very much on our radar. We've had a number of conversations about that. We've kind of pushed around different things. We haven't landed on exactly how to capture that yet.
It's tricky, right?
But it's very much on our radar, is to try to really create a document where people kind of at a glance can orient themselves and know how to find or where to find the information they're looking for. That's kind of the nut we're trying to crack, whether that, like I said, be with some level of categorization and color coding or something of that nature, so that people can at a glance say, okay, I'm looking for the green stuff or the red stuff or the whatever, if it's a color coding, and move through there.
Because I think this also ties into capital as well, right? Because if you're looking at infrastructure, just as that example, there's 3 of them in here that will be repairs and maintenance in every section. And then you're going to tie it back into the capital, which is not part of this as well. So when we put a full document together, how all of those things link together, I think will be the key. For me too was, and I mentioned this to CAO yesterday, I'm curious about the timeline and the priority. You said there was none in this one. So what does, when someone looks at it and says, oh, when is that? Can we find out when it is? And does it line up with the priorities that we have said, or what people have told us that they would like done in the what we heard?
it's just on that as well. What I shared with the mayor was we did have a column on timeline, and we took it out in favor of a budget column to show the costs and staff led, because there's only so much real estate we have to work on a page. But so again, it goes to show it's an ongoing conversation and an ongoing, they're going to see different information, different iterations of this, because we're at the end of the day, what we're trying to produce is a document that's meaningful for you, meaningful for the community, and just ultimately shows these are our priorities and this is what we're working on. So that information we'll continue to manipulate the information to see what works. And I guess I'll again note that we actually have a project charter for review of our operations planning, because I'm going to tell you right from the word go, what we end up as a final product in this round, like that council approves sometime in March, is not going to be perfect, and we'll continue to work it so that we can make improvements for next year's iteration and the following year's iteration. Like, this is going to be an evolving document over time.
Yeah, I would say this is a living document. So I think that one of the things that I would like to see as we go through, Alex has a request out for stormwater review. I'm not sure exactly what we're calling that project, but once that's done, I'm sure that's in Alex's list of things to be done to get accomplished. Once that's done, it should maybe link to Bloom's to that study. And then, like just so it all it's all one place. That's what I would like to see. I think that would make sense. Like,
You're talking about some sort of like a dashboard. Is that what you mean?
well,
Like
even
for-
a link that will go right from it. It's going to say in Alex's department, it's going to say stormwater study, and then it's accomplished, right? Check mark or whatever. But it's a hot button that's going to take you right to Bloom's for that report.
So that's beyond what we're able to accomplish right now. Like we haven't set up Bloom's, and we haven't set up this document to have that level of drill in and observation ongoing. But in the long run, I'd like to see us getting somewhere like that. But that's beyond what our technical capabilities are right this moment.
I don't want to move ahead or anything, but just to talk about the infrastructure and to build on what you said, Councillor Van Niekerk, I think it's really hard for infrastructure to be so specific. I don't want to overpromise. Things, pop up, and I'm looking at it now, and I don't want to overpromise on certain things as things come up. Being on council for 4 years, sometimes things get delayed or moved up depending on that, and so I don't want to sort of focus on that as a timeline or to be too specific, if that makes sense. That's my opinion.
When we had timelines, when we had a column for timelines in there, it referred to basically seasonality. So this is something that would start and end in the spring and to the winter, or something of that nature. So it gave a little bit of, again, these projects, all the same people are doing all these projects, and all the money is being drawn from the same pot. So that certain things go first, certain things go second, and to get through it, and they change based on what happens when we start to deliver these things, and what needs to happen before something else. So we've given ourselves, when we had a timeline column, it gave us kind of that 3-month window to say, okay, this is intended to occur, generally speaking, in this period. And then moving forward, where we could be more specific, if we had a contract that was being delivered or something of that nature it's going to happen on this month, we would refer to that month. But generally speaking, we were taking kind of a seasonality approach to it.
I have just a generic question around this. So if I look at the office of the CAO, there are 6 people, and Dan is primarily in Remo. So if 5 people, and I look at the list of, 2 and a bit pages, 3 pages of projects, and none of them are, super quick. A public washroom review, bylaw reviews, HR reviews, the IMSA reviews, like those are large projects. I'm curious about the actual, and this is not a criticism, that's a long list for 5 people.
Yeah.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
No answer.
And again, that's where kind of, if you look at so that same thing is going to occur in every department. While Public Works is, for instance, has a much longer list of people, what they're asked to do on a day in and day out basis is extensive. So we're gonna encounter that. That's again what we're trying to accomplish with just the presentation of this document, that every service that we provide is being provided by one or multiple of about 65 people. That's what we've got to work with, and a budget of about $15 million. So when we have these competing demands when they're coming to you, coming in the front door, it's, again, one of the purposes of this document is to orient the public to what we do, who we are, how we do it, because it's not an endless stream of resources and abilities to be able to do all kinds of different things. This is like any other organization. We work within the parameters that we've got. So the other comment that I'll say is we've got a description on the project charter table. We've also got an anticipated outcome. So some of these projects are multi-year projects, and what the outcome section is intended to show is what will be achieved on that in this year. That project may continue. As an example, I'll go down here to, I believe it's here. Microtransit, might have moved it to another section actually. We will not be delivering a microtransit system in fiscal year 25-26. We have microtransit as a project in this operations plan. I want to be clear, we will not be delivering a system in 25-26. That's unrealistic for us to be able to do. But what we will do is what's outlined in the charter is reviewing the work that's been done, speaking with other municipalities and organizations that are delivering this system, and preparing to be able to deliver some sort of a pilot program in a future fiscal year. So we're trying to be purposeful with that column to say, with these various projects, some of which are shorter, some of which are longer, this is what we're actually looking to achieve in this time period.
Just another generic question. So when this goes through, you said you're going to be reviewing it as it goes. Will council be updated? Are we going to do like quarterly updates? Because I feel like we do an operations plan and then we don't see the operations plan
Till the next year.
till the next year.
Yeah.
And we don't actually see the results of what the last year's operations plan was. So when we do this, will we do quarterly, I'm just throwing out quarterly updates to say, if we have another column that says season, did we hit that season? Are we still on track to hit that season? Are we did we plan accordingly? Do we need something else? Do we need to put money in contracted services, whatever we need to do to juggle to get the things done?
That is the intent. Yeah, the time period and the form are still being figured out, but much like with the budget, you get variance reports at intervals. We'll be doing some sort of a report back at intervals to say, this one, we got this one off the ground as we intended to, but we ran into these challenges, or whatever the case might be, so we can have that report back through.
Thank you. That's going to be extremely helpful.
So do you want me to continue to run through the various project charters, or?
Yes. Yep. Yep. keep
So is there
going.
any other questions on the CAO's office section?
Nope. I don't see any. Go ahead.
Moving into finance and corporate services. We've got projects surrounding accounting and financial reporting, policy review, community engagement, enhancing our financial planning and budgeting systems, revenue management, IT, and audit. Thought there'd be all kinds of questions about financial. Off the hook, Beth. Yeah. Oh, no, I poked too hard. Okay, go ahead.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What is revenue management?
Any component that you have in your operating statement, there's a degree of management of it. So Most accountants will call revenue management top line management. So you're ensuring that the trends that you've seen in the past are maintained into the future. So when you start to notice anything kind of go off the rails, that's where you're pulling things in and you need to notify the CAO, senior leadership, and council. So understanding what creates your revenue, what percentages of that creation, if there's new opportunities for revenue management as well, or revenue streams, that's revenue management.
I have a question on the same topic. Yep. When we're looking at finding new revenue streams, that's of interest to me. So I'm curious how we're going to do that. I know the CAO spoke to, I mean, it's a small department with that, you know, continuing on the day-to-day work. And that's a, you know, that's a job to find that new revenue stream. And I think it's important to offset taxes. So I do think that's an interesting way to do it. So my question is, how do we do that? And are there, I know other towns have grant writers, then that's what they do as a job. I'm not saying we need one full time, maybe we do, I don't know. But are there people that you can contract out to do that type of work, that if someone, you know, every year at the beginning of this time, we say, we need to explore XYZ and have someone do that for us?
The answer is yes. I don't think that we've taken upon that approach in the past, from my knowledge. Also, when you're considering any of these project charters, one thing it says, it'll say who the staff lead is, or who's going to be the lead of that particular project. It doesn't really say who the other sponsors within the project are going to be. So when you asked about revenue management, I'm sitting next to the director of planning and economic development and thinking, this is the gentleman that's going to do, you know, his team. They're the team that are going to introduce new avenues, introduce new means of how do we look at that management, that revenue production. And revenue production, whether it be in taxes, whether it be in services offered or programs that we do through the rec center, et cetera.
Yeah, and again, to put expectations in perspective, this item at this stage really is kind of dipping our toe in the water and getting a better sense of what even opportunities are. Municipal structures for the generation of revenue are highly conventional, I'll say. As Beth rightly pointed out, a lot of what we'll see in terms of new revenue generation will likely have to be driven through planning and development. There are a small number of other opportunities that other municipalities have looked at and whatnot, but those are very unconventional and take a lot of research and leadway in order to start to pursue them. Moving into engineering and public works. A little bit more detail here on what we're actually working with in terms of our physical environment. And again, the purpose here is to show, you know, for a relatively small town, we are dealing with a very significant base of assets, from linear assets to facilities, parks, and whatnot. There's a lot here to actually be managed. And these are the folks who do it. What you've got primarily on the departmental section of this ops plan for engineering and public works are a lot of the operational projects that will occur. There's a capital section that comes after that speaks to the capital projects. But of course, there's linkages back and forth between them. And there's, whether they be duplication or some misalignments, that stuff, we're going to get that stuff cleaned up in later versions of this plan. But these are the anticipated projects in terms of many of the operational priorities for public works. So Al Whittle storm draining and sidewalk improvements, sewer treatment plant disinfection system upgrades, the town engineer, Alex, and his project manager also provide an essential duty in the assessment of development applications. So again, this is that cross-organizational work that occurs. Proposals come in through our Department of Planning and Economic Development, and many of those proposals need our engineer to actually review for integration into the municipal systems. So that occurs on a fairly regular basis. We're looking to develop a town standards and specifications policy for town infrastructure. So one of the challenges that we encounter right now is without a set standard for the built environment in the town, literally every project proposal that comes forward, Alex has to review it against best practice, what's going on in the environment right now in engineering standards. We don't have a town of Wolfville standard to assess that against. If we did, we could potentially streamline that process a little bit more to be less burdensome on Alex and his time. Asphalt repairs and paving. So specific details are still being developed. Pedestrian counting for crosswalk evaluations, concrete maintenance and replacement, parks maintenance, project management, disposal of leaf and yard waste options, and then asset management. Any questions on that series of projects?
So is stormwater assessment in the capital plan?
It is.
Okay. So, and did you say, just to be clear, that that's going to be married with this or added at the end so that people can see both or not? Because it just kind of read for somebody who doesn't really understand that distinction. Again, if they're reading it, they might read that and be like, oh, we're not doing anything to address the stormwater.
So we'll take a look to see, yeah, again, the objective of the document is for kind of the user experience, to be able to see things clearly and understand. So we'll take a look to see if that there should be some sort of a linkage between this section and capital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then can you just clarify around pedestrian evaluations? I thought, because we had kind of talked about the crosswalks at the special budget meeting that we had about getting a crossing guard there, and there had already been some work done on that. I just am curious as to the link between getting the crossing guard and doing an evaluation.
So under the operations budget for engineering and public works, we are looking at procurement of a MyoVision camera system this year, which will utilize part of that budget allowance. This will allow the town to independently monitor and evaluate crosswalks and get usage data so we can use our crosswalk evaluation policy. And that will this will guide us in making plans to improving crosswalks that are identified for review.
So we don't actually have any plans to fix the crosswalk problem down at University in Maine?
University of Maine. So again, this is one of those cross organizational issues. So we've started to have some preliminary discussions on what, in addition to what Alex just described, what other forms of intervention we can potentially pilot at that location. We're not in a position to share much in the way of details yet because we're still kind of working through that. But that's something that since the original council discussion, we've started to look at what options might be for that particular intersection. But what Alex has described, what's going to be captured here, is equipment and internal ability that'll allow us on an ongoing basis assess crosswalks throughout town, so to ensure that they're safe and get good counts going forward to go into those future assessments.
So the work that Alex just described is something kind of completely separate to the specific concern around that crosswalk and the four-way that was raised, and that those two items specifically aren't captured anywhere in the ops plan? at
It-
the moment?
It's related because that equipment will be used and those crosswalks and any other across town. But we are looking, based on council's feedback at that last meeting, we are looking at specific options for those crosswalks that we can potentially pilot in the short term. So right now, there's no, if your question is there a specific reference to that in the ops plan right now? There isn't right now. We're still working through those details.
Okay. But you're going to put one in?
If we have something that we can confidently deliver, then we'll have something in there.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just have one other question. It was about in the door-to-door detailed document, there was a line item in there that said condition of Main Street paving review, street condition assessment ongoing. I was just wondering if you could clarify what that means. And because I didn't see that reflected in the ops plan. So is that a scenario where it's like, we're kind of looking at it, but we're not going to be putting it in our plan this year? Or
So I can share with you the I guess, an overview of how we assess our pavement condition annually. We have,
well, I meant specifically for the line item that said condition of Main Street paving review. Like that was the line item. And then it just says street condition assessment ongoing for Main Street.
Yeah, so the condition of all streets, including Main Street, are assessed annually in our pavement condition index process.
Okay.
And plans for maintenance paving. So that would be like a milling and repaving, resurfacing type work. That work is planned and prioritized after we get the results of that condition index. That's a regularly occurring task that Engineering Public Works does every year. So Main Street and all streets in town are assessed, and repairs are planned and prioritized accordingly.
Okay. Okay. I have a similar concern. I remember when we did our crosswalk evaluation policy, and we outsourced it to, I don't know what the name of the group was now, but I wasn't completely thrilled with the final document and the way it landed. And it was because they did it at a point in time, as consultants would, they come in and evaluated something. And I remember one, for instance, that was top of mind was in front of Landmark East. And the consultant said, oh, it's barely used. And I went, well, it is, because Landmark East uses it consistently. And if you were there at 8 a.m. or at 3:30, that's where all the kids off Sterling and everywhere else on that street get picked up. Totally missed by the consultant because he doesn't live here and didn't have that insight. That's fine. What I think I struggle with is when we have things like that and we have concrete personal data that we know exists. And I think to Kelly's point, though, there's 2 crosswalks at least that we hear every single day that you're out on the street, that's why I'm looking at when I said, what is the priority and when do we plan on doing something about it? Because we can say, we're working on it. And quite honestly, we've been working on it for the whole time I've been sitting at this table. So I feel like and I'm not saying make a rash decision, but at some point we have to do something. So can we figure out what that something is in a more timely manner? Like University and Maine, it's going to be, before we could do anything, it would probably be the summer anyway, where most Acadia students would be gone. So if something could be planned to have in place for September, I think that would be somewhat reasonable given that this is February. But how do we say that is a priority for us and get it in there and ensure that we have an outcome that we're happy with?
So I just want to comment on the crosswalk evaluation policy piece. What that policy provides staff is a tool to objectively evaluate crosswalks and make decisions according to that framework. Council ultimately has the ultimate authority to prioritize something over that objective based analysis. If 50 people write into council and complain about a certain crosswalk, council can direct staff to come up with recommendations for improvement for that crosswalk. I just wanted to put that out there. In addition to what Glenn said earlier about the measures that staff are looking at this year to temporarily or to trial potential options for improving the university crosswalks and the four-way stop. We do have a project charter that has been carried over from the previous year to assess those intersections in that immediate transportation corridor. So it assesses not only, it'll have to address not only pedestrian crossings, but also safe vehicle passage, among other things. And it'll have to consider future plans through the downtown core in terms of AT and future parking and things like that. So there's a lot of moving pieces to that, and it's kind of a standalone project, if that makes sense.
The other thing that I'll just note to your point around consultants and time of day, as I understand the MyoVision, part of the purpose of purchasing that MyoVision is so that that technology that the consultants use, we will own that. And we're not reliant on a consultant to deploy that and run the risk of time of year, time of day, time of season gaps in assessment. So we can deploy it at our own will, potentially for longer periods of time or more targeted in certain areas as well, versus relying on consultants to create that data for us.
Okay, so if I understand Alex correctly there, so is the word MyoVision, is that the right word? MyoVision?
Yeah, MyoVision is the name of the product.
Yeah, so your plan is to use that at other crosswalks. I think we all recognize that Main and Gasborough and Main and Highland are problems. I mean, I'm going to say they're university, sorry, not Highland. University and Main and Gasborough are problems, at least in my opinion, and those needs to be front and center. And whatever we're going to look at doing, we need to do that. You know, that's to me, that's a priority. That's something we heard on the street. We hear it every day. And if we went out front right now and looked at Gasborough in Main, there's not a traffic problem. There's no issue out there right now. We all know when the hours are. It's, you know, it starts in middle of August and it goes to middle of November and they back up to the Catholic Church. That's when the problems are. And we've talked about in the past, and I don't know how much traction it got, but we talked about maybe the RCMP going out there and directing traffic. And personally, I believe it's the pedestrians creating the problem. If we could stop the pedestrian, let 3 cars go through, I don't know how we handle that. I'm not a traffic expert, but to me, when you have one person at the pedestrian who comes across, crosses Gasborough, crosses the Tim Hortons and goes over to Tans, that one person has just backed up the whole thing. So let's stop a pedestrian for a second, let a few cars go through, and then do the same thing down at Highland or down at the university. We put a gate down, make the university kid come along, press a button. He has to wait 30 seconds, a minute, and hold him up there and let a few cars go through. I don't think it's going to be that hard to really regulate. I mean, I think but we need to do something. And that's what we heard. That's what I heard on everywhere. I hear it at my job every day, 3 or 4 times every day when the traffic's bad. But the traffic is not bad right now. We know when it is. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 10 o'clock when the classes are changing. That's when the problems start. So let's address what the problem is. And we have to hold, I think we have to hold the pedestrians for a second. Like I'm not saying hold them for half an hour. I'm saying hold them for a minute. Let 20 cars go by the gym. Let them get by that pedestrian, that crosswalk, for the kids to come out and expect every car to stop for them. That's kind of ludicrous in my mind. Like those kids just, they're on their phones. They don't even look up. Somebody's going to get killed, and I don't want to be responsible.
I'll let Alex respond to.
Yeah, so there's a couple of pieces to that. And I mean, I'm not going to argue with your perspective and your point of view, because I'm sure it's shared with many people who live in town and people who drive their cars through town. There's a couple parts to this. So what you're talking about has a high degree of interactivity. All of these discrete locations through this core have a high degree of interactivity with one another. And that requires a level of analysis that is beyond our expertise internally. So that's why we have to do the study. That's why we have to engage consultants to look at the conditions and to provide professional engineering recommendations for us to come to council with potential solutions. And those potential solutions, you know, one of them may be to install traffic lights that stop pedestrians. How those solutions are implemented will affect how the town and our public streets are used. So this is the second part to how I want to address what you've brought here today. The streets, the public streets through town are for cars and pedestrians. So how council chooses to prioritize flow of traffic, be it pedestrians or cars, that's going to be up to you guys. And that's going to be, you know, you're going to be selecting from potentially a laundry list of solutions that will either make it faster to drive a car through Wolfville or better to walk on the streets as a pedestrian. So unfortunately, you can't always have both. And I think there's going to be a critical decision point that alters that level of service either for the cars or for the pedestrians once the options are put in front of you. Does that make sense?
I think I just want to give my perspective on this because this has been talked about for a long time. So I think Alex is talking about like a permanent solution with infrastructure that is with an analysis and assessment, and it takes time. And we've done multiple assessments of this one in my time here. So and everyone's aware of that. I think what we're talking about and what I think I'm hearing from the table is you want something done maybe with a human being trying to control traffic or something more temporary in this season. Is that what? Right.
We don't have to do a study to do that.
And I think so there's kind of two projects. So one is looking at long-term solutions, and one is we are bringing information, as Glenn was alluding to, on what we could do this season if something is viable. And that's with the RCMP, that's with our compliance. We've had multiple conversations about that. The former mayor, Jeff Cantwell, was a really big proponent of this. So that is also something we're pursuing. So there's kind of two things that we're talking about, I guess, just to be clear. Yeah.
So can I just sum it up perhaps is, I think we need a short-term solution, which potentially involves a human being. And then if Alex has the Mayo vision and a longer term infrastructure that we need lights and all the other things, then that's a whole different project. But for now, we need something that short-term solves the issue, and then we can continue on with whatever other information that Alex brings forward for a more permanent solution. Should that be the outcome of the study? Or maybe it says the short-term one is the one that's going to last forever. I don't know, but.
That captures it. And my apologies for being a little bit more elusive. We don't have anything there yet because we're still in early stages of looking at what those options might be. But we do have to take some care and some time to determine what the appropriate option is. Because if we do introduce a person on the street at an intersection to direct traffic, again, what we're dealing with here is the interface of vehicles and people. So we have to be cautious, and we have to make sure that we've got our I's dotted and our T's crossed before we introduce that pilot, because we do run the risk of having collisions between vehicles and people, just like we do today. But if we're actually putting an intervention into those intersections, we just need to really make sure that we've got it assessed properly and it's set up appropriately so that we're not putting, whether it be pedestrians or a member of town staff, in harm's way to direct traffic at in one of those intersections in particular. We've had 2 collisions in the last 3 months with a lot more speed than there should have been. Speaking of the intersection at University in Maine. So we very much hear you. We very much appreciate that this is going to involve a short-term and a long-term view of this particular problem. But again, we have to put the safety of the community and our staff first and foremost in whatever intervention we make, particularly at that kind of a location.
Thank you. I think you heard all the passion around the table, obviously, because safety is a huge concern for us and in protecting our residents. I guess I did hear from Mayor McKay and Councillor Prometer that the last time that we did have a study, I don't feel like it addressed a lot of our problems. And so when we brought things up, I heard we didn't see this as an issue. We didn't see this as an issue. So I think when we're the boots on the ground and we're saying this is an issue and you're receiving letters that this is an issue, how are we going to address that gap moving forward? That's my concern. And if you're going to have a consultant comes in, obviously it's budget, it's, it costs money but if they can do it when Acadia students are at their peak, that would be more beneficial than to just come in. So if that could be a consideration too, yeah, that's all I have to say.
Absolutely. And it's not uncommon to have an objective assessment of a study of some sort done. And for various reasons, it just doesn't jive with what you feel and see on the ground. And that's part of the function of these kinds of forums, is to take that objective information, take that analysis, mesh that with what you're seeing and feeling and whatnot, and make a decision. That's part of the point of these forums. Anything else on the public works section here?
The other one that I think we've had in the works for a little while, and again, maybe it comes down to the timeline. Do we feel we'll have something for, because I think we need to communicate it if we don't have a disposal of leaf and yard waste? Will that be spring, or is it status quo and we hope to have something for the fall?
That is being, the RFD for that is being actively worked on now. I think we're probably still a couple of weeks away from determining whether or not we'll be in a situation to implement in the spring or the fall. Our director of planning must have known I was coming to the planning section. Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, just one other thing that I saw, maybe I missed it, but around parking, paid parking, parking enforcement, parking plan.
I think that's in this section.
That's in the next section.
Yeah, it's in the planning section that we're going to go
Okay,
over. Yeah.
never mind then. It did say in the council, what we heard at the door document, that the stormwater assessment was included in the ops plan. It says that it's included in the ops plan.
The stormwater, it's in the capital section of the ops plan.
Okay.
So that's the one that I believe you folks made reference to it earlier, of making a connection
Yes.
into the public works and engineering section as well. So on the planning section, so I'll just go through the projects, and if you have any questions, we've got both Devin and Nick here as well. Yeah. So we've got the Housing Accelerator Fund and Growth Management, which is highlighted because that title is changing based on feedback from council. We just don't know exactly how it's changing just yet. Micro transit, which we've talked about. There's an item there to reinvest our efforts in public art. Wayfinding planning and implementation, urban forest management, development control, which is kind of a nod to the ongoing everyday work of that department, working with our community, working with developers, managing permits and whatnot. Maybe I'll just stop there because then we go into the community development section. So I'll stop there on the planning section.
I don't know who's this fall. I don't know if, sorry. I don't know if this falls under Devon or where this goes, but the woolly algid, where are we with that and what's gonna happen? And you know, like that was kind of a crisis 2 years ago, and I don't think we've done anything about it.
Maybe I'll just park that for when we bring Peter in. So we have been doing work on various tree initiatives, and we've been working on a tree policy for the last couple of years. So that's in draft form. It's coming on February 18th to be presented to council. And that we can include an update on that as well. There has been some pilot test areas, both at the nature preserve. There's been work with Blommen and naturalists around that, and we don't have, you know, the big question on that was, are we going to do some treatment and have a cost associated with that? So I don't think that's been determined at this point. But there'll be more discussion on that and whether, you know, there's this certain amount of decision making around that because there is a cost. And so we'll bring more discussion on that is the short answer.
So you think it'll make it into this year's budget debate?
That's why we wanted to bring this tree conversation on the 18th. Because, you know, it's kind of a values discussion around, you know, everything from planting and maintaining trees to more of the management side like that. So, yeah, I think there'll be something around trees in the budget.
No more questions?
On the planning side of things?
I just was wondering if there was room to include a bit more on the work that we're doing around the MPS review. I know that you kind of included it in the Housing Accelerator Fund line item there, but it doesn't really speak to, you know, looking at the commercial zoning, or some of the, it just basically says we're looking at non-market housing. And the other work that's happening isn't really captured anywhere in there. So I was wondering if there was an ability to just either add that in or add another line.
Yeah, we can add, I think as we iterate on this, we can add as much as like kind of you feel needs to be clear for your audience.
Yeah.
Because we do have another document that will be attached that has a more detailed project charter. But as you say, like for someone who has no idea and they're looking through this document, we may want to have some keywords in this little summary. So
I think so.
If you have ideas on those, just send them and we'll, I mean, in the spirit of trying to keep these somewhat short, I could, you know, I could write 3 or 4 pages in there,
Well,
but
I think it's just that one box there. Sorry, let me bring, I can't really read up there on the screen. Yeah. Additional training.
we can totally add those though. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, while the microphone goes by me, maybe it's planning and economic, because the next one says community and economic development, but I think planning and economic development should also go together. And maybe it's just that one line that needs to come to make sure we're capturing that under there. Because you have planning, there's nothing on economic development in the planning realm. And the next section that if you flip the page, it goes to community development and economic planning.
Yeah, I'm okay to tell you, well, you can add to this, but I mean, so just for background, you know, my job was planning and economic development, still is, but there's also community development. So I'm trying to kind of meld those. And I think getting some feedback on how it makes sense to be presented is helpful as we navigate.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the department is actually planning and community development, and led by the director of planning and economic development. And yeah, so we got a little bit of cleaning up to do here on some stuff. So yeah.
Can I just, before I pass it on? I guess when I'm looking at this, I am looking at it through an accessibility lens because I've been involved in three versions of it. So I do like the fact that it's going to be easy for the general public to decipher because that's really important. That's part of the reason why we're doing it. So I know that it's going to be hard to put everything in it. So if it's something that's going to be too hard to explain, can we have possibly you know, an asterisk or an appendix to say this is linked to capital or something like that? Would that be too much? Or if it requires a lot of explanation, we make an explanation at the end, so we don't get into too much detail. Would that be possible?
Yeah, short answer is yes. At the end of the day, we're going to try to make this document as plain language as possible. So we are going to go through and try to eliminate acronyms where we can, eliminate jargon where we can, do those things. So that should clean up a lot of it. But yeah, if we have the need to make those clear linkages, then we can do that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
We had a lady from Open Arms here this morning, and Leanne was here this morning, and her comment was that there is no provincial housing strategy. And here we are working on a non-market housing strategy. And my question would be, why are we working on a strategy for non-market housing when there is no provincial housing strategy, when housing is clearly a provincial issue? Plain and simple.
So I mean, I've shown the 5-year action plan that the province has around housing, so I'm not sure that statement was true. I've shown it in many presentations. This government does have a 5-year plan that I know of. So that does exist. I think there's maybe more nuance around some of the services there with mental health and like beyond building housing. And so that's where I think Leanne was referring to maybe is some of that integration around, you know, all of these different departments that the provincial government has. In a complete crisis that we're in, the federal government, I mean, this is just the reality of what we responded to, created a fund to reach down past provinces into municipalities and do what they described as transformational and systematic change to the housing system, which we have a lot of control over. So I think the sort of blanket comments that housing is a provincial responsibility, I think is very complex because we have a significant responsibility for housing, which is we decide what housing can be built where. And that includes how we enable market versus non-market housing. And I think some of the maybe rhetoric that's out there is that market housing is going to solve the housing crisis. And that's not, you know, that's definitely not going to happen. And so I think there's a lot of linkage between what Leanne said and really just the groundwork we're doing around non-market housing, which is looking at some opportunities to enable groups like Leanne's to come into town and have a better pathway to actually own and operate forever affordable housing. And so what we control as a municipality, and this, you know, this is where I kind of take issue with some of the comments around, you know, this is not a municipal issue. It absolutely is. When we're controlling what can go where, how big it can be, you know, that's a significant responsibility. And that's really what the premise of the Housing Accelerator Fund is. That's what we're doing with the non-market housing work, is trying to enable more opportunities, not to build housing, to have nonprofit providers have a smoother pathway to be able to provide housing in the town. Because we hold up the permitting system, we create how stuff is being built. And so that the province isn't involved in that, and they haven't really changed the provincial statements of interest around housing. You know, frankly, there hasn't been a lot of action from a enabling policy framework outside of HRM to have more housing built by the province. So, you know, from my seat, the Accelerator Fund has been extremely helpful to give us some resources to actually look at how we permit housing and how we enable housing as a municipality.
Okay, so short of changing our MPS, I mean, we're not going to build housing, right? I think I don't foresee the town of Wolffield building affordable housing. I really don't. And if we do, then that's Well, I hope we do, but I can't imagine we're going to do it. I can see the Wolfville area, church council or somebody spearheading it, but what you're talking about is you're holding up building permits. That's really what you're saying, right?
So we've created a system around how housing gets built. So from when someone comes in the door with an idea around, the first piece is, where can I put this idea I have? So some people own land. Most nonprofits do not own any land, right? And so a big part of this non-market strategy is looking at publicly available land or near publicly available land, and looking at pathways where the town can create an investment environment, making a project viable on those properties. So that might be, looking at land that we own and providing it directly to nonprofits. That's been a very typical intervention that's happened across the country to provide some non-market housing. So that's, a straight line on making a project more viable. That's really what we're in the business of, is how investment ready is our town to put housing in the ground. And so that's really what we're in control of. We're creating, the rules. It's not just, building permit is on the very back end of that process, to be honest. The front end of that process on project viability involves a lot of pieces. The biggest piece is land. Like, do you have land to put something on?
Can I, yeah. Yeah, so can I, I'm just, Chair can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry, I'm over 7. This is a housing, I think this is a PAC and a housing discussion. We're right now discussing the operations plan. So this is a whole other bucket of conversation, which we don't even have information on in front of us. This is simply, are we looking at the operations plan? And if we want that in the operations plan, then let's ask Devin to put it in his section of the operations plan to come back with more information to us. But if we're getting into a housing discussion, that is part of planning and a different discussion altogether. It's not part of the operations plan.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you. Yeah, that's for, is it to do with the housing discussion or just, okay, I just want to clarify that so we can move right along.
I heard you. I just wanted to say that reading over the ops plan, what I'm appreciating, I know we're nitpicking this and that, and that's our job too. But I'm appreciating that there's a new lens, and it's coming from Glenn, and it's coming from Beth, and it's coming from the synergy amongst staff to look at things with a different lens. And I just really appreciate that, because it should happen, cyclically. And a lot of these things will get worked out.
I appreciate that feedback, Counselor. And I'm one of the things that I've appreciated about this process more than anything else is, the entire senior team has taken hours and hours and days and gone over this together. So this really is a creation. You just use the word synergy. This really is a synergy from right across the organization, rather than having any individual fingerprints on it.
Sorry, this is a question that was for the previous section. Back to Alex. Can I ask it? Or
Too
is
late.
it-
No.
Too late. Just something that I noticed. In the detailed document, there was a section around concerns around drinking water. But I didn't see anything commented or reflected on that in the ops plan. And I was just wondering where that discussion was going or where that was at.
So if there are blanks in the what we heard table,
Yeah.
it's one of two things. Either we're still looking at it, or it's essentially commentary, and it's not going to be dealt with in any significant way. So it's not going to show up in the ops plan. But we still have to, there are a number of blanks in that table. So that's areas we still have to come back and provide.
So do you know where drinking water falls? Is that something that's being looked at or not?
Drinking water is, always being looked at. Maybe I'll let Alex speak to that and hand the mic over.
It's been some time since I reviewed the What We Heard report. What was the specific concern you're asking about?
The concern in the drinking water was taste, chlorine, sediment, cloudy, brown, silt collects in tanks. And then the comment next to it was none, normal conditions.
Yeah, so chlorine taste is normal for water that's chlorinated. The rest of the parameters that are mentioned are tested regularly in accordance with our approval to operate, and our drinking water is within the guidelines that we're mandated to follow. So at this time, there is no action planned for that.
Yeah, the row in that column of the spreadsheet that I gave Glenn was based on a number of observations on Skyway in Mount Pleasant, which is one of the few streets other than Main Street which is horizontal, i.e. there isn't all that much gradient on it. And there were one or two people who claimed, and I use the word claimed advisedly, that their tanks were filling up with sediment. There was another place also, and that was in Woodman's Grove, where people said that they got a lot of sediment. And I suspect that that's simply because it's accumulating there rather than accumulating down towards the bottom of the system. Is there a solution to that? Yes, a better settlement process, perhaps, up in the reservoir system, or smaller screens. But to say that there was none, I think is a bit misleading. We know that chlorine goes up and down depending on whether the pipes have been opened up for maintenance or not. That's standard throughout the civilized world. But chlorine usually gets Okay.
So we're from time to time, whether it be water or anything else, we are going to get concerns raised or complaints raised from the public. I would categorize the way that that's been described as, a handful of folks along Skyway and Pleasant, Woodman's Grove. So when in everyday interaction with our municipal systems, if there's an issue like that, call into Public Works, it can be assessed if it's an issue, and then there'll be some sort of a response provided at the staff level. At this stage, based on a handful of those kinds of complaints, our water system operates within its regulated and normal parameters. So we haven't put in our operations plan an intention to develop a project around this or anything of that nature. If those things come up, they should be called in under normal channels, and they can be assessed at that staff level. Yeah.
Is it a source water question or is it an ops plan? Because we'll be here like again all day if we keep,
But I think anecdotally, it's the problem that we're talking about here. But did we not change the pH of the water maybe a year and a half ago? Our operational, the amount of lime we're adding.
We have responded to a natural change in the water's pH from the source water well field. We've responded by increasing our chemical injection to bring it back to within the range we're mandated to be in. Yes.
I knew we did.
Okay, I'm going to pass it back to Glenn. We're going to keep moving on the ops plan here and try to focus on the ops plan.
So we'll move into the community development, economic development side of things as well. So again, just a quick rundown of the proposed projects. Parks and Recreation Review and Planning. There were aspects of this that we've been discussing and Devin's been discussing for some time, but I think coming from that initial budget discussion there a couple of weeks ago at the Legion, it really kind of galvanized a lot of the things that we were already kind of looking at or notionally thinking of. So we've brought that forward in terms of an actual project plan for this coming year. The WBDC agreement is slated for review in this coming year. We have our tourism operations annually that have been included. The launch of our Rec Hub and Bike Loan Program is also here. After-school programming and a review of that programming is included. Environmental leadership camps, which are delivered each year, Memory Cafe, Try It recreation programming, and other rec programming. Again, what we heard from you folks was along the lines of, should we be looking at changing things up, delivering additional programming? We'll be completing a review of that overall structure through this year to see if what we're delivering is continuing to meet the needs of the community. Equipment and supplies to support recreation programming. So this is additions of equipment. Grants to organizations. That process is annual each year. So that's it's actually, we're in the midst of it right now for applications. The town will continue to partner on events and support various, a whole host of events through the year, which are kind of a key piece of our community offering. Community events with EDIA and partnerships with Community Oven, still developing those project details. And then, of course, our regular operations and community development, and looking at rec center upgrades and assessment. Again, this is coming on feedback that council has provided. And then a project related to reviewing options for Wolfville Harbor access. Yep.
Just a question on the box that says community events, EDIA for equity, diversity, and inclusion, and our partnership with Community Oven. I'm curious why with Community Oven isn't in the delivery of events section, because I'm assuming we'll do equity, diversity, and inclusion events with other people aside from like Acadia and all of the other things we discussed yesterday and ongoing. So I just wondered if that should just.
We did have it in
If there's a
there.
question.
We are in discussions with them and wanted to bring more details. That's why we kind of pulled it out as a separate offering. We have had success with them doing very specific events around reconciliation and some of the other examples we give there. So there's kind of two separate things. One is, as you alluded to, our events have the EDIA components, support, and those pieces, and those come in different formats. And then there's very specific events that we thought could be delivered basically by the Community Oven Group. And so we're working on a proposal that we would bring back and see what that looks like and how that plays within the bigger budget picture. But you two might want to speak a little bit to this, but we've seen a lot of value in what they can deliver based on our capacity around events. We thought we'd put that in there separately for discussion.
Thank you.
To continue.
For the projects in the community development section. So if there's otherwise I can move on.
Any other questions before Glenn moves on? Nope. Go ahead.
We've got sections related to the Wolfville Police Service. That section I should have added at the beginning. So that the moment that this section was, the moment that this draft was sent, we've continued to revise it. So there are revisions that we've already made. We'll continue to make revisions based on your feedback. This is one of those sections. We've removed the officers' names and we've added the priorities of the RCMP. So that section will look different the next time you see it. Wolfville Fire Department, again, section outlining a few key details about the Wolfville Fire Department, the people who serve it, and the volunteer hours that are involved there. And then we get into the capital investment plan. So this again isn't say all in public works. It's a compendium of capital projects from right across the organization. We do have that feedback of making the linkages from this page to the appropriate departmental sections. This is essentially, as you saw it a couple of weeks ago in the slide decks that Beth had provided. We've updated it with the budget numbers as we know them today. But again, this will continue to evolve as you see the next version. I think that's it. So if it's any we get into communities council, but I'll stop there on any questions about the capital investment plan.
No, I just, yeah.
It's the same as you saw before.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Elliott said and how much work that, you know, the CAO and all the department heads put into this, because it was significant. This is the first time I've been on council that we've actually had a look at it. So I do really appreciate it. I'm thinking I'm speaking from all of council on here. I don't like to speak from all of council, but I'm certain, and I do, the questions were great. And the passion is here. So I think that this is a really good collaboration between the two. And I just wanted to thank you because I know it's been a lot of work. And since you've been here, the listening that you've done has been evident. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. And again, it's very much a team effort. This has been a fantastic group to work with. The enthusiasm, the passion, the ideas coming forward. It's been a real privilege.
Any other questions on capital here? No, just looking around. No. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
The last of it is your committees of council. Everyone, no one will be surprised here. It's just a description of committees. Had to give a nod to our former CAO. Find her in here somewhere. Yeah. Organizational chart, and then we get into the appendices. So that's it.
So that would be the conclusion of the presentation.
conclusion of the
Okay, if
presentation.
there's any lasting questions, you may ask them now, as long as it's associated with the ops plan. If not, I will move on. Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Back
So
over there.
we're at number 6. We have public comment. Is there anybody online? I don't see anybody in the gallery, but is there anybody online that wishes to speak? No. Okay, we will move on. Sorry, you're in the hot seat again, CAO, for the report.
Yeah.
Let you transfer. How about that?
So you folks have heard me talk a lot today, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details on the CAO report, but I'm not a fan of just of glossing over on some of the key work that staff have been doing. So just want to point out a couple of key things. Our staff have been very busy with a quick start to the winter operations. Our crews have been doing a fantastic job of not only keeping the streets and sidewalks clear, but there's been a renewed emphasis on communication around the status and whatnot, primarily led by our new senior manager of operations. So that's been fantastic to see. And complementary to that service, our compliance office has been very active as well, making sure that our plows and operators actually have the ability to get through the streets with our equipment and removing vehicles that are continually popping up illegally parked through the evening and after storms have started. That has remained a challenge in certain areas of town. I'll be completely open on that. So you may have been hearing a little bit of that about that. Snow cannot be removed with a car in the street. It's as simple as that. If they are there outside the hours that they're permitted to be there, they will be removed. And that's in order for us to properly maintain those streets and have conditions that people can drive and walk on. That's the way it's going to be. But our staff, both at compliance and public works, have been doing a phenomenal job this season to keep those streets safe. In anticipation of a few Acadia-based community events, we've been working with our counterparts at Acadia and with the RCMP to make some plans for both St. Patrick's Day and Cheaton Cup, which are upcoming in March. Those are kind of flashpoint events in the regular academic year or community year where we have seen a little bit more activity in terms of noise issues, conflict between neighbors and large gatherings. So we are very much aware of those events coming up and are doing the footwork now to coordinate for how we can respond to those events. I just want to take a minute to talk about a joint working group that has been established between our GIS coordinator, engineering and public works, to explore the integration and mobile forms that we offer our staff to enhance the management processes, improve tracking and field operations. So having our field staff with iPads, with systems, to be able to go out and actually input data directly, so that we can have that just-in-time information that's coming forward, and then it gives us a better platform to build asset management systems and to improve decision-making as we move forward. So again, that's a cross-organizational collaboration that's been going really well, and has been showing some dividends over the last little bit. We're anticipating some busy and community activities on Heritage Day. So Monday, February 17th, we will be offering an event at the Wolfville Legion that includes heritage themed activities for both kids and adult, food and music. And this is being offered in partnership with the Wolfville Historic Society. And I hear there might be some trivia, there might be some different things like that. That'll be a fun time.
Is it from 1 to 3? Total.
In planning and development, we're continuing work around the Housing Accelerator Fund. Preparation and activities are continuing with the Municipal Planning Strategy Review, and staff have attended the Nova Scotia Not-for-Profit Housing Association's Cross-Sector Housing Summit and the Not-for-Profit and Cooperative Housing Day. It's a difficult title to stick on a poster. But it was by all accounts, it was a fantastic event, great networking opportunity to build community of practice right across the province, learn from those who are a little bit further along in the process than we are, to be able to coordinate and deploy various policy pieces in Wolfville as we move forward. And the last thing I'll just highlight is we have 2 open competitions. I believe they're still open. Yes. Staffing, we are currently advertising for an in-house custodian, which is a union position closing on the 7th. And we are advertising for an RCMP detachment assistant position, which closes on the 14th. So our detachment assistants, Bev Elliott, is retiring in June, I believe. So we've launched that competition now to have her successor in place. That's it for the CO report.
I just want to make a shout out to the public works guys. Like, I see a lot of people who are traveling in and out and walking around town, and excellent job, by the way, on the streets and sidewalks. And that's the comments that I'm hearing at work. So that's unusual comments to hear. Usually you only hear the negative comments, but I've heard nothing but positive comments. So thank you.
Is anyone else?
I was going to say the same thing. Even up by us on the top of the hill, we don't often get our sidewalks done as fast as, but they have been remarkable this year. It's been really great. So thank you for that. It's been great. I have one, I think it's a question, maybe it's a comment. RCMP detachment position that has typically laid with the RCMP, but that is now moving into the town of Wolfville because we turned to an MPSA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So we are technically the employer. We do the hiring. We pay the associated costs. They report to the sergeant of the Wolfville RCMP. What's that? But the new person will be. I believe that's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Any more questions? I don't see any. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll give you a break. How about that? Is that good? Okay. Moving on to number 8, committee reports internal. Is there any more to add? Councillor Butler with Equity, Racism and Advisory. Okay, thank you. Is there any questions? Okay. Planning Advisory, Mayor McKay, anything to add? Questions? Comments? Nope, thank you. Check off. Then we're moving along to external. We have a report from Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition. Councillor Williams, is there anything to add?
Kelly and Jody and I met a week or 2 ago and mulled over a number of things to make sure that we're all on the same page. But basically that report still stands.
Thank you. So we'll be looking for some update on that later on? Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you. Mayor McKay, intermunicipal service agreement for Valley Waste and King's Transit. Anything to add?
As submitted.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope, seeing none. King's point to point. Counselor. That's, yeah, okay. I know, I'm looking to make sure I know who's who now. Put my glasses on. Remo, that's usually submitted by Dan. So any questions on that? Nope. Valley Community Fiber Network. As submitted. Any questions on that? Nope, thank you. WBDC, Wolfville Business Development Corporation, Councillor Palmer, and as submitted. Any questions or comments? No, okay. There's my check marks. We're back really quickly, and I'm assuming there's no public input, but I will ask in the last 10 minutes if anybody joined. Nope, there is none. So can I have a motion to adjourn to in camera under section 22 2 of the Municipal Governments Act, contract negotiations? Okay, and seconder? Thank you. All in favor? Okay, so we are adjourned to in camera.